call this meeting to order, 9 o'clock or thereabouts. I'd like to open by saying we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within the traditional lands we are meeting today. And before we do an adoption of the agenda, I would just request a motion, freedom of the floor for Chair Amy Watson and for Councillor Denise. Sure. Move second by Chair, all in favor? That motion is carried. Before we go with an adoption of the agenda, we have some suggested additions. So if you want to go ahead with those.
Yes, I would suggest through the chair, 8.4 under new business. That is RDCK recreation center rental policy. And an addition of 9.2 in the agenda, and that would be further budget considerations, Creston Valley Services Committee, which could be moved. So our action list could be moved to 9.3, and this item could be installed at 9.2.
Made the motion for a seconder. Director Jacqueline, all in favor? Motion is carried. So, then we will receive the meetings of the previous meeting on February 12th, unless there are some changes noted. Hearing none, we will receive those.
So on the minutes, just to note that there were some what I use action items that were not captured from those minutes to the action item list, but I'll bring them up again when we get to that.
Okay. We can move right into our delegation, which is the Creston New Horizon Senior Society.
There's lots.
Hi. Thanks for the time and thanks for getting us quickly. This is longer than I'd like to present it, so move along quickly. This came out of a discussion with Craig and Stu regarding our contract and our request to have a contract that extends for a longer period. So I'll start with just reminding who we are. It's actually kind of our yearly update. Creston New Horizon Senior Society is 100% volunteer driven, and that's important to this discussion because we're in part talking about a business case, and being a volunteer organization helps us deliver services without a budget impact. It's also unfortunate that things without a budget impact don't often get noticed by management, even if they're important. So we now have 400 members. Because of the kerfluffle that happened last year, we got a lot of attention, a lot of good promotion. Thank you for that. And our membership has pretty much doubled since that time. So that's great. We have 10, by the way, just our formal structures. We have 10 committees right now, and sometimes that increases as we get more activities. And we have a board of 9. We don't spend anything on consultants, lawyers, accountants. It's all basically rent and the cost of items for our dances and stuff like that are our own expenses. Our mission, that is important, is affordable activities.
Jesse, through the chair, did you want the slides advanced? People online can't see the missions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Fifth slide, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at them on my own device here.
Yeah, we're all page.
So I didn't realize we were also online.
Yeah, online.
Thanks.
Observers and other members of our.
Okay.
There's no.
So
It shows that online.
You can't see the shared screen? Oh, I see. No. It can be shared online?
I don't know if Director or Councillor Dumas can see it, but I have nothing on my screen.
I can see it either.
Yeah.
Councillor Dumas can't see it either.
Coming soon.
yeah, sorry, I'm sort of presenting as if people have the notes in front of
Robin,
them. So
is the Zoom and the presentation on the same computer? No. So you're not going to be able to share on one computer to another.
Can you see it now?
No, because we can see the screen.
Yeah, I can't either. I'm logged in, it's not on.
I can share it if
If
you
they're on
like.
different computers, they can't talk.
When Amy to share it, we all have it on our agenda.
Gary can share it.
No, I'm a Luddite, but Board Chair Watson could probably do that.
Just hit the share button and you get to choose that. If it's open, you get to choose.
We can ask, Chair Watson, there we,
There it is.
you can educate me.
Happy to do that.
Okay.
Just
Right,
let,
so we're on slide
go ahead, Gary. What slide are we on?
5, I believe.
5. Thank you.
So that's our core, is affordable activities, and I'll talk a bit more about what affordable means. And also providing opportunities for seniors, elders to contribute and share their skills. And another interesting aspect of Creston New Horizons is that we fill a gap. We're before seniors get to any kind of assisted living. We want to maintain people in home, active and healthy. We're not there to, provide health services to people who require assistance. And in terms of a business case, that's a great business case. Keeping people off the services, the healthcare services and the other assisted living services is something I think that vastly contributes to maintaining a healthy revenue system. Okay, how do we meet our mission? If we could slip down to slide 8, the one with the calendar on it. We're always there. That's an important aspect of providing the service, is getting people in the habit of showing up, so they don't just come once a week. Most of our people come at least a few times a week. We have 210 hours a month, not including our pool, which is the lower level. And that's a lot of action. As we'll see, and I think it's the next slide. Sandy and I, we probably come on an average of 4 to 6 times a week for activities, and it costs us, maybe for me it's about $60 per month. For Sandy, it's about $120 a month. That's pretty darn affordable for an awful lot of fun. Many hours of fun every week. But even though that's very affordable, for some people, $120 a month is a significant impact on their fixed income. And we really want to keep that low. We charge $2 or $3 for each activity, and that gets them 2 or 3 hours of activity. We definitely want to maintain that. Onward, I think I said earlier, over the last few years, the membership has tripled. Partly that's because of coming back from COVID, but also we've got a rejuvenated board, which is very active and effective. We have a good communication scheme in place now. We're able to communicate with a lot of people in the community to make them aware. There are other users of Rhoda Crest Hall, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but weddings, elections, the Bird Festival, Wild Sites, annual general meetings, they also use the hall. It's not much. Craig, you might know more about how often other users use it, but since in our experience, about once a month, somebody else comes in to use the place. And sharing's always gone smoothly. There's never been an issue with that. If something comes up, we can cancel our activities to make it happen. And basically the hall stays, we don't do anything corporate. It stays as community activities like elections, like nonprofit, annual general meetings, like that. Our current contract is reviewed and renewed every 6 months. It's a fixed price. We pay basically $1,600 a month with cost of living, and that's a great rate. That allows us to be low cost. But that's not in line with the RDCK policy. It's not fair to continually ask the administration to go ahead and enter into contracts with people that don't align with your policy. That's one of the reasons we're here. And it's very flexible. Our relationship with the rec center works very nicely. I'm not having any issues, and hopefully, Greg, you can back that up, that we're not really having any issues. So we get the upstairs, and we get the pool room downstairs, a small room can fit one table. That's what we get. Taps is downstairs as well. Security, the parking, the building maintenance, that's great. And a week between. One of the things that reason we're here is we want to be able to do longer term planning. You know, for example, we want to put in an audio visual system. We want to be able to improve our storage that we have there. We want to maintain the kitchen. There's a lot of little things that need to be maintained. And because we're kind of not top of mind to the rec center, the rec center's got a lot of other things to do, and we're really the only user. It'd be very nice if we could proactively take care of things within the center and make improvements on our coin, because we don't want to get involved in budget cycles and stuff like that. With the rec center, we want to keep that off their work desk. But the longer term planning is important. And when we moved to this more flexible schedule about 18 months ago, that helped us experiment more with what kind of services we can deliver. So, you know, we've moved into doing things like grief counseling and a little bit outside of our activities focus, but of value to our seniors. So this might be more than we need to talk about, but if we went with the youth group rate, which I think is the best youth group rate, our costs would go from the $1,600 to $4,200 a month. And that would definitely mean that we can't do what we do at the cost effective and affordable way that we do it. Other users right now, I'm guessing you probably pull in maybe $600 a month from rentals from other users. So this is not a large budget item that we're talking about here. So that's kind of the overview of where we are now. Our request, try to be more specific about what our request is. We want to maintain the current fixed price approach and something of a similar financial impact on us. We'd like to have a longer term contract, but we still want to have yearly reviews, because we don't want to get out of touch with the people who support us and let them know what we're doing. So basically, we'd like it if Road of Creston all can be more or less allocated to us, with the understanding that other folks can come in when necessary. One of the reasons we want to do that is we might want to move towards doing more nightly activities. Right now, we're, for the most part, except for our dances, we're focused on daily activities. We want to move to some nightly activities as well, because we are almost full. Calendar during the day is basically full. That'll also simplify our contract. And we want permission to be, with oversight of the rec center, of course. We want to be able to maintain the center, you know, fix holes, paint things that need painting, put shelves up in the storage room, put in an audio visual system, put a sign on the building, and that would be all on our coin. And with the approval of the rec center to make sure. The rec center would continue to take care of those things, like air conditioning systems and heating systems and things like that. And in terms of return on investment, if we're not doing this on a volunteer basis, if we were to provide similar services through the rec center with paid staff, I don't know how much it would cost, but it would cost a bomb. I think that's basically it. Thanks. Thanks for the last time we were here, where it was a lot more contentious, and we've moved to a better place. That's great. And I hope in the future that if you guys have any ideas of things that we can provide, please give us a call, and we'd be happy for our squad of volunteers and all that to try and set up other things that may be needed for seniors in our community.
Thanks. I'll open it up to questions. I see Director Vandenberg has questions.
Great. Thank you. So I have a question for your presentation and a question to staff. So my question regarding your presentation, you referred to something about policy contravention.
Right.
That is, I don't understand what that is. Maybe I should, but I don't. What do you refer to specifically?
Great. Can I?
Oh, through the chair, I believe they're speaking about the rates that they pay are well below what we would normally be charging for that typical rent.
Right, but that's not written in a policy.
Yeah, and the fees and charges policy.
It is, okay, so, all right, thank you. And then secondly, if I may through the chair. So your fee, your agreement then would be, it's a fixed price agreement for a period of time, renewable once a year, just a check-in, if you will. But it's probably, because there's activities other activities that are going on in that hall, would it make sense that that agreement have some sort of an hour wrap to it? So that within the period of a month, it's understood it's X amount of hours, because how then does staff decide whether to rent to an external, a third party group and not intercede on what your expectations are, unless that's written in? Would that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Certain number of hours per month. Yeah. We can't complain about, so to speak.
Okay. Good. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say something? Because as the days go by, things come up, and it's worked out really well. So we decide that we're going to have something, right? So we contact the rec center and say, is Saturday, whatever, free? If it's free, can we book in there? We're gonna have a garage sale. We're gonna have a whatever. And they've always been amenable because it's empty, right? So we pay a monthly fee for that space. And we always let them know what we need. But it's worked so well because people come and say, well, can we do this? Well, let's give it a try. You know, let's have the fire department come and talk to the seniors about what they need. Well, we didn't know we needed the fire department last week. We need it now to talk. So it's worked really well for all of us, I think, to use that hall and have our lectures to the people. But again, we just don't know from day to day. So we need that flexibility to get into that hall to offer that without a specific number of hours a month.
Right, but you can go minimum amount of hours.
Minimum,
Plus flexibility.
okay.
That's easy to write into an
Minimum
agreement.
we've
It
got
makes
covered.
staff job a whole lot easier with that understanding.
Or conversely, there should remain free 60 hours a month or 20 hours a month or whatever it is for other users. Just I think a written expectation is a good thing to have, because 3 years from now, it's a document people can look back and go, oh, okay, that's the expectation, that's the understanding.
I see that Amy had it.
Yeah. Director Watson, you had your hand up, and if there's something you wanted to contribute, please do.
The process here is a bit chunky. Generally, operations are staff, and there's certain processes already in place that can be discussed with tenants. And I just wanted to make sure we understood that generally negotiating a contract is done with staff, and then they'll make recommendations to the elected officials if there's concerns. I'm just curious if the Rotocrest has had that conversation with staff, because that's where it generally starts. We don't get involved in
Yeah, sure.
conflicts until there's issues.
Through the chair, we had a meeting with the group back in December to talk about this and just really quick history, because we can ask for request direction to staff to come back with a more concise analysis at a future meeting as it relates to the agreement. But we had a long-term agreement with New Horizons pre-pandemic that had a greatly subsidized rate mentioned and direct, scheduled use, et cetera, as per pre-negotiated back in the day. That expired, and then coming out of the pandemic, or even middle of the pandemic, the group had a challenge with insurance, and so they weren't able to utilize the space to the full amount. So because that agreement had ended, we have been since piecemealing with periodic agreements from time to time as they've been able to expand their services, still maintaining that subsidy rate outside of the fees and charges policy, which is a decision that staff had made at the time to accommodate the group. So where we're at now, a couple of years after that, is that we're to the point where we need to have, and we have had discussions with the group about where that subsidy could and should sit. Staff would come back to the commission, the committee, and then recommend to the board that there could be a subsidy applied to their rate, their use. But certainly we do have other considerations for that space that were, may or may not fit with our business model. So we would request coming back to the committee with a report with analysis and a recommendation for this situation.
Thank you for that, Chair. We're really in the operations lane, but what Craig just provided helps me understand. They've had discussed it, so that's good. Thank you.
Dr. Jack.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's why we've added the late item rental policy to this agenda. That's where this conversation belongs, and whether it's a rental versus some kind of contract use, exclusive and or arrangements. So the only question through the chair to the delegation is, have you seen or are you aware of the arrangements we have with either, say, Valley Community Services, which is not a rental policy conforming to the fees and charges, or even to the physio works upstairs? Those would be documents, I think, that be of interest for background that you could ask for, the public documents. Just that is sort of one model. It's maybe the far end of the exclusive use spectrum. And we have to review the options, public benefit, that kind of thing, as to why we would enter into non-market agreements and individual agreements that are not subject to the fees and charges. So I would, if you haven't seen them, I suggest just to read those as one end of the spectrum versus the other areas of the building that occupancy just flips every day, every week. It's never consistent. Very much unlike your organization.
Yeah, that'd be great. I guess essentially what we're asking is what we're presenting here in line with your board's wishes, and does it seem reasonable? So we can go back to Craig and Stu and create something more solid in the future that might be along those lines.
Director Tierney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Jesse and Sandy, great presentation. I learned a lot. And with the work you've done and the benefits, the health benefits for seniors is amazing.
Thank you.
Very much in support of what you're doing and just really impressed with the organization you put into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we, this is really important. We really need a longer contract, right? We don't need to look every 6 months dealing with these people. We have other things to do. We have programs to run. And getting these contracts together every 6 months is a nuisance, to say the least, please. So if we could get a 1 or a 2 year contract so we can carry on with our business, it would be greatly appreciated.
That's the model I referred to. Read those other contracts.
Yes.
So just for clarity in this conversation, I just want to suggest that staff bring back recommendations regarding your request. And if it's possible to April, that'd be fantastic.
Through the chair, that's feasible, yeah. April.
But Chair, that would be under item 8.4, the direction of staff would be captured there, I think.
Yeah, that's when we get there.
Yeah.
Yep, so your message has been heard loud and clear. You've given us a good presentation. As you see, we will be looking for a staff report on this to see what comes next. And I guess one of our big concerns, and I don't know where we're at with this, is capital savings to maintain the building and how that factors into this, and that can be captured in the staff report. So we know that there'd be money there, but we need to do a roof, and we need to do all these other things. And so the condition of the building is important to us, of course.
I wanted to say one more thing.
Sure.
Okay, once I get on a roll, gotcha. Okay, so our group looks at your building like it's our home, right? So I am there and I'm in contact with your maintenance people a lot because we are there all the time. Okay, well, the lights are not working, or this isn't working, or that isn't working. Well, the people that rent it once a month or once a year or whatever, they don't care. And they're not gonna let you know that your building needs attention. But we do because it's our home. We've been there since 81. Right? So it's part of us. I hope you take that into consideration too.
In addition to that, we do, professionals do building condition assessments. So it's over and above what you're suggesting to us. And we do have those so that we can plan for the future. And so all of our facilities eventually will have those assessments done. We'll have detailed reports to give us a really good understanding of that. And you know, those are big picture. You're giving us the small picture stuff, which is appreciated, but we need the big picture stuff as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming up. Okay, so we will then move on to staff report on position recruitment by Mike.
Well, I guess with the exodus of people, position recruitment is a little exciting. So, I was unclear and I know what we need to present, so I kind of made sure that we provided a pretty wholesome background because this comes up every once in a while. I want to talk about what I think we can do to help solidify some of the conversations regarding to physician recruitment. So first off, I sort of provided a background to it of how it started in 2006, 2007. So that pretty much predates everybody at this table of when they first started talking about it.
Alternate director at the time.
But pretty much the elected officials sitting at this table today, it predates them in terms of that decision making. But when they first started, it was really just to sort of support some recruiting efforts because there were some retirements taking place, and they were worried. There was a noticeable shortage of physicians at the time, and they were worried that with those retirements, that number was just going to get worse. So kind of a little bit of an informal response. The other thing was the hospital was not operating 24 hours a day. The emergency room it would close down in the evening, and so I know when I first moved here in 2007, when we had rescue calls in the evening, I mean everybody would go into cramp. Under the extent of the injuries, it was always cramping. So that was kind of the early part of it. So moving forward into towards 2009, there was a start of funding a little bit of recruitment. They had somebody that acted as a physician recruiter at the time that went to a few conferences and they had some success. And after that, by 2010, what they did was they really formalized it, and that's where the funding became very stable through Service 108. They hired a dedicated physician, a recruitment specialist, Marilyn Fates or so that was really sort of the start of the more formal. So up until 2010, it was they had provided funding kind of through a grant from Service 108, but after that, it was hired somebody and they focused on that as a program itself. And as well as what they also expanded at that time, which they felt was important, was was to work on trying to do some retention as well. So there's things that they could do to help the local physicians, also provide support to the physicians they recruited. So when they come to the community, helping them find housing, having socials to meet the other doctors, doing tours of the area, like, so they sort of added to the program as well. So when you jump forward to, you know, what took place between 2011 and 2023, they had recruited 16 physicians. They also, in addition to the 16 permanent physicians that recruited, they also recruited locums to help fill vacancies because there was, you know, lots of times where people were taking extended periods of time off, and so they were able to start making connections and promoting the area for locums to come to. Many of the locums also turned into full-time physicians. So after they were here for a period of time and living in the community, some of the locums would come in for a 3-month stay, be gone for a year doing something else, but when their opportunity arose, they actually came to Creston. So that locum program sometimes helps, you know, attract people in a permanent way. But the one thing that's important to note is, while there were 16 physicians recruited, many of them were recruited to replace retiring physicians, which didn't increase the amount of capacity. The patient panels, there's still, you know, a fair significant number of people that still do not have a full-time doctor. But what it did do is it allowed the emergency room to be open 24 hours a day in the model that we work with the physicians that provide that coverage. And so since pretty much 2008, 2009, the emergency room has maintained a 24-hour coverage for the community. And in that whole period of time, there's only been 1 or 2, and it was not because of a lack of physicians, it was because of nursing staff, unavailability of nursing staff. So, and so it's been a very just handful of time. And then more recently, in late 2025, one of the last Creston Valley Health Working Groups, there was a high-level discussion about developing a strategic plan for the health working group, which really would help cement and bring the stakeholders, because there's more than just the elected officials, the stakeholders in this, you know, the physicians and interior health also participate as stakeholders to that. And I think that what that framework would allow is to make sure that we align that recruitment, retention, the locum use and funding and governance, so sort of reestablish what is the service, you know, is there anything different that we should be doing? You know, like that'll actually give everybody that opportunity to sort of review the program a little bit more in depthly and make changes appropriately. When we jump ahead to what the activities of 2025 was, there was a number of physicians that were recruited. You know, there was 1 permanent that arrived last year in March. There was 10 locums that were brought in. We had 16 different students that participated in placements. 10 resident completed rotations that were 2 to 4 months each. And then 2 practice-ready assessments were conducted over a 3-month period of time. So that provided a lot of additional coverage, which also helps on the emergency rooms and some of the practices. The physician recruitment specialist attended 5 conferences last year. And these have been the conferences that have been pretty steadily attended. There has been, you know, like, you know, a few years back, there was a trip that they did to a conference in Ireland, for an example, to see if they could plant the seed with the Canadian students, especially that were attending school there, about whether or not that they want to come back to Canada, particularly Creston. And then, as well as that, there were some specialized events that they held to introduce physicians to our community, as well as take them for tours and show them around. So that's, you know, for the site visits. Going into 2026, which kind of was some of the spillover of the work of some of the site visits that were done by other physicians. There was, I think, 4 physicians, or sorry, 2 that have already arrived. There's another physician that actually, since we published this or put this report together, there was 1 more physician that's arrived and started now. So there's actually 3 that are here. We're anticipating 3 more coming that'll be here later this year. So, you know, a lot of success from the previous work that's been done. So this year you're looking upwards of 6 positions, I think, that'll be recruited to the community. And again, that doesn't, unfortunately, that's when we go into the departures, you have, one physician is closing his practice, go back to school to study anesthesia. Another physician is closing his practice to return to work in oncology based out of Cranbrook. And so those patient panels kind of, add to the number. And while you're recruiting some more people, they don't, all those panels aren't filling up. And in some of the physicians that are being recruited in 2026, for example, there's an anesthesiologist that'll be coming who won't have a patient panel. So while they are providing some work in healthcare in the community and improving things and work out of the hospital and provide some emergency room shift coverage, their main role will be in anesthesiology, which means they won't have a patient panel. So they're not reducing the number of patients that they'll be, or patients that are without physicians. So I did kind of provide in that list some of the physicians that will have patient panels, some of them will not, or whether they're taking on a smaller patient panel. And then as far as communications and public relations, there's been a little bit of increased work around that. So they've created a dedicated website, and they're managing the Creston Valley Physician Recruitment Facebook page. They also started working with a organization called Healthcare Infusion, which is really designed to target American physicians to immigrate to Canada. And it was served by a couple out of the Vancouver Island. But all the information that we put in, we actually manage the information and content on that site. So if you go look at that site, well, it's their platform and they're marketing the Health Infusion, nationwide to American physicians. When you go to the Creston Health Infusion page, that's all Creston information that's provided by your health recruitment specialists.
Just to further to that, the most recent recruit is American, and I'm not sure if it came through this process, but we've been using that process to get their attention, and she has friends too, so practice. So
yeah, so and then moving forward in 2026, one of the conferences already been attended, but there's still 4 more, so a total of 5 conferences are planned for this year. And there is some efforts, and again, this is part of the health working group and working with physicians about, where is the best, where are the gaps in the local healthcare community, and where can, some concerted directed effort be put in place. So they're looking very specifically towards physicians with maternity and mental health. We do have a mental health physician that will be retiring this year. And so they want to put a little effort in that, considering that is the only local mental health physician. So, and then the from that discussion that was in late 2025 with the health working group of doing some strategic planning, because of one conference not being attended last year, there's some surplus there, which basically allows us to undertake that project to get that strategic planning, get the alignment with the local government and governance and the physicians to sort of, map out what the next 10, 15 years of physician recruitment looks like. I think that's really about it. I talked a little bit about the value of the strategic planning process for that. I provide an overview of the budget from the 2025 actuals to the 2026. The reality is that the contribution remains the same at 87,500. And in this case here, even using the carry forward for the strategic planning, is that the town will actually just utilize and offset a little bit of that cost. Particularly because we think it's relatively important to get done. I provided, we've got a few budget notes about, there'll be no funding increase for this year. And I think with doing some planning, that'll really help solidify whether or not needs to be any changes to that budget in terms of how service delivery is provided. I think that's about it. So the next steps or what's going to be taking place is that there will be a Creston Health Working Group that will be a meeting be scheduled shortly. And then moving forward is we would like to move forward with the strategic planning for that group and sort of solidify what some of the expectations are. And I think, and it's mentioned in an upcoming report as well, which can also be part of the strategic planning is because this is funded through economic development as an economic development function, is there an opportunity for this to actually move in under the economic development to try to find some other efficiency with that program? Wouldn't want to say that there isn't that opportunity to explore. And that's the update report and questions.
Dr. Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. Two observations, having looked at this a little differently from area A and relying on interior health for the sort of broad sweeping recruitment and then doing the value-added stuff for property clinic. So first, I guess, observation is that the report mentions the number of locums and some of them stay, some of them don't come back rather. But that's the future. We're going to have more locums and less permanently recruited positions or more vacancies at any time, I'm sure. That's just the nature of the competitive job market for positions. So focusing on locums, that's great. We're never going to have all positions recruited at all times. I don't see that as a realistic goal. When you guys get your conversations and your strategies, you got to probably allow for continual recruitment. That's reality. In terms of, in keywords, maybe I'll, CEO more referred to gaps, which I see really analysis of gaps in specialties or expertise, medical specialty. But there needs to be maybe more scrutiny on gaps in process because there is a parallel process, the interior health recruitment process. And then again, just heard speaking to alignment with the local elected officials and physicians. But again, I didn't hear anything about speaking to alignment with interior health. The reason I bring this up is travel to conferences may or may not yield the best result for your investment. Health authorities are at these conferences. Health authorities may or may not present your value-added community attributes well at these various individual events, and they won't have the same face-to-face value. But have you invited Interior Health recently to sit down and go over what the current process is and look for gaps in process and duplication process and whether maybe you should shift your focus? Maybe out of 5 conferences, there's 2 that are much more important than others. Just don't keep doing the same thing because you've always done that before. What does Interior Health attend in terms of conferences? Of course, they have a way bigger budget, but it'd be interesting to hear from them. So I don't know if you guys are talking to Interior Health, but that would be something to think of value. The reason I bring this up, and this goes back to when I was an alternate director in 2005 and 6, the ask for expanding, Area A, S107 economic development to pitch into this is fine because 1/3 to 1/2 of the residents of Area A come here versus Nelson and or the Carpentry Clinic, which is a pretty active center. But I view myself as having that a little bit more backing off and high level observation of something that has evolved, but maybe just growth because it can. And if we're talking about duplication in government service, I hope you guys, because it's been excluded from the conversations, are really scrutinizing duplication, value added, before you go inviting anyone else on your taxpayers to pitch in.
So, I can answer some of that because I've talked to Kathy quite a bit. And at some of these conferences, Interior Health's representation is far lower than some of the other health authorities, and that's a concern to her. Also, what's a concern to us and her is the fact that there are bigger fish to catch for the Interior Health. That's in staffing doctors elsewhere. And that basically sometimes precludes us. They say, well, Creston's doing okay. They don't have their emergency closures and all this other stuff. So they don't participate at the level we'd like them to. And of course, there's reasons for that. And yeah, maybe when we form the strategic plan, that should be part of it, is how do we draw them back into providing us the assistance we feel we need. But again, this whole thing was formed because we weren't getting that assistance, and compared to other communities, we're sort of the okay community. And so I agree, we could do that, but so far it hasn't borne fruit. Really, our own recruiting here has made the difference, not IHA. And I don't think we can rely on IHA to provide us with the number of recruits that we need.
So having worked with IHA necessarily, say the Carpentry Clinic, I'm just suggesting you ask them to sit down with you and present what they're doing, and then tell them, not anecdotal or third party, tell them face to face, you guys are letting us down. Don't let the fact that this community is on a good level be a deterrent from investing and maintaining that. What's the old adage? It's easier to retain than to recruit. So IH should have a solid interest, whether they fund part of this program or they do what needs to be done at those conferences, their valuable contribution. I don't think they've been involved in the conversation enough, and how would I know? Because I don't sit in your meetings, but I think you should talk to them.
Well, I agree with you, and one thing I would suggest you do as well is, if you can, evaluate how this benefits your area, because as you say, a lot of your constituents benefit from this, and you not being a participant, or not you personally, but your area not being a participant in this, something I would encourage you to take a second look at. We've said that before.
I continually look at it.
Yeah.
I can't sit in front of constituents and say, we're now gonna invest in this because, and then be prepared to answer the question, well, doesn't the provincial government already do that? Don't the health authorities already do that? That gap in knowledge and that gap in communication is what I wanna have before I stand up at town halls, which I do routinely, as in a meeting last night with communities, meeting the night before with different reasons. And I get questions. So I'm saying, fill that gap, please. And all the directors here should be able to answer that question. How is this duplicating IH? And why isn't IH funding part of it? Or can we do better? So simple questions.
So I'd like-
So appreciate the opinions that were provided. That, I guess, the one thing I would ask the elected officials to keep an open mind to the empirical view of how IHA does their stuff is if we've been paying attention to hospital emergency room closures through the interior, they're all interior health. You know, Lillooet, Cash Creek, 100 Mile House, these are all, all communities that rely on interior health, all the communities in worship, UBCM, by the way, we met the IHA president at UBCM, recently, and recruitment was all part of this as well about changing the rules. But his worship, we've been to meetings with these communities that are relying on it, and their closures are because of physicians, and they're asking how we do it to emulate what we're doing because we don't have. That's empirical. There's no study to that. That's just the reality of that. So we have communicated with IHA. The budget for recruitment here is fractional. They do not promote any particular area, except for when they are looking for something, the bigger thing. So, that I think that's the comparison we want to do is you can have the meeting, they can say, yeah, we'll go to that conference. Let's just look at what their other communities are suffering from. And I mean, that's the political decision that can be made at the table. That's the facts that are out there on the outcome. So.
So to clarify, is AHA presented to the three directors funding S108? Or is it staff? That's the difference. And if you present to the directors, invite me and educate me. I'm not ignorant of the topic, but I don't think the directors are educated. And that's what we need to speak to community about. I understand all the empirical, non-empirical. I read the news. I see the bulletins. I continually get the closure notices. We all do. Or if you don't, you should. But if they talk to you, IHA, so that you can tell them and their senior management directly, not one, but all the funding partners. And please invite me, because I have opinions, as I just stated.
Thank you through the chair. Just a clarifying question and then some comments on the budget itself. So my clarifying question is, I kind of thought I heard CEO Moore suggest that the town of Creston puts in additional investment into this program. I thought it was completely funded by S108. Can I just get clarity on that?
Sorry, just for the strategic planning for this year is there's a $13,000 surplus in last year from not attending one of the conferences. So I put a budget of about $15,000 for strategic planning. It might actually be a little less than that, but one of the consultants I talked to, by the time you pay for the planning and travel to come here and that kind of stuff, with the expenses, you're looking between 12 and 15,000. So what I through our management consultant budget, the one consultant we also utilize, so if we pay for their travel here, I can utilize them for a little bit, so I'll subsidize some of that travel, or the town from our management consultant budget will subsidize that. I'll just time it with something that's, work that we will be doing as well, so that we can share in that expense cost. I guess that's a better way to put it.
Right, thank you. So just to be clear, S108's ask is 87.5, same as it always has been. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
No change to that.
So I then see that we have almost $14,000 surplus that carried over from 2025 to the proposed budget in 2026.
Correct.
I do not have an appetite for strategic planning. And I'll share with you my reasons why. I think first of all, there needs to be a shift in provincial policy first, because it's uncertain. It's moving all over the place right now. Very uncertain. We're too easy to try to anticipate that, and then it is a download on us. And the other thing is it is a duplication of what IHC is required to do in terms of recruiting physicians, their obligation. I think we have an opportunity to engage our community, our champions in our community. We're looking at an ECDEV government model review, in which we'll be having a chat with our community champions. There should be some opportunity to explore on how they can fit into assisting with this goal. And, to your comment of the strategic planning to kind of take a look at that 10, 15 years in the future, let's not fool ourselves. AI is disrupting this and a lot of other things. And so it's almost premature to suppose that you're going to look at some 10, 15 years down the road when everything is majorly disrupting right now. Should almost take a step back and just sort of see how the pieces are looking like they're going to fall out before committing to a strategic plan that could be printed one day and totally relevant the literally next day. So my thought is I have no problem supporting the budget, the 87.5 as we traditionally do. I do see the value in the work, but I also feel that the surplus needs to be deducted from that 87.5. So really our contribution is 73,700. So we're really adopting the 2025 budget, moving it into 2026. That's what I'm comfortable with. And I've shared with you the reasons why I think we need to be really careful what our position is in all of this, and not accept the responsibility from those that have that responsibility. And the world is changing, and it's changing very quickly. So for those reasons.
I just want to remind you, it's a Creston Valley Health Working Group, which involves the doctors, which are involved in succession planning and how to recruit people here. And I think that's a reason we need a strategic plan, is because of their involvement in this and how they see working with us, because they're a big part in recruiting physicians here. Make no mistake about it. It's not just Kathy and her work at these conferences. Our physicians have done a lot to bring in other physicians here. And so I really think that, and they have a desire as well to participate in a strategic plan. And that's why, because they're part of the working group. And so I believe it's very important that we continue with this. And I see other communities that they are more interested in emulating what we're doing and going back to IHA and say, here, you guys ramp it up. Because it's something that they have not been that good at.
And I appreciate your point of view on it. I don't know that that I can agree to that. First of all, we haven't had a meeting with our physicians in quite some time to really be able to engage at that level. Sounds like you have, but to Director Jackman's point, we're being excluded, directors, at these conversations. So I'm just of the opinion that I don't believe that we need a strategic plan right now for those reasons that I've laid out. I'm not fully informed. That's not my fault.
You get at the Creston Valley Health Working Groups, everyone that we've had.
Yep, and we haven't had one for a while.
We haven't, and part of a strategic plan.
And we
to
certainly
come up
have
with
been in
that.
conversations with Interior Health. as Director Jackman has raised.
Well,
So, and
part of
I will point out to you that this is a requirement. Our taxpayers are already paying for this. So we have to be very mindful about how we accentuate the opportunity to ensure recruitment. All I'm saying is that I don't disagree with having the budget. It should be the same budget as we had last year. There seems to be a lot of success, as CAO Moore has pointed out in the report. But I think that's the additional ask I'm not in favor of today.
So just, but if we were to use the surplus to lower that, then next year to go back to the 87,000 tax increase next year.
There is no reserve necessary for this. This is a budget
I
account.
understand that was.
So here's your budget for the year. This is what we want to spend. Yes, go ahead and spend it. The reserve, if you have a reserve, means you didn't spend the budget. So it should be deducted from the next year's budget. We're too easy to get into pushing money into reserves all the time. And in a lot of places that's necessary, but this isn't, in my opinion, is not one of them.
Chair Watson, I think welcome your comments.
You're probably not going to like them. I just want to remind you guys that when you're speaking over each other, it cancels everything out online. And respectfully, you need to wait for each other to finish speaking before you engage. And the chair is the one that directs that. So just be mindful of that in your discussions because it's hard to follow. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
In this lull of conversation, I do want to go to Director Vandenberg's point, I believe he's trying to make around the power of community champions. So in Area A, we do the red carpet. And I've gone to them where you have a physician and a partner, both looking for a good lifestyle, move to the shore, some the other side, take the ferry back and forth, which is the predominant model. We have community champions who do that as volunteers. One of our community champions, Peggy, is the president of the BC Rural Health Network. The entire province, very significant. And a couple others, just, if I pick on Anne and Creston, you'd be amazed at the full, meaningful careers these professionals have had in both direct delivery of health care and administrative positions over the decades. Like, we have an amazing wealth of expertise locked up in our community champions who are not invited to the table, who maybe would have the most meaningful conversation with somebody who's thinking of living and working in this valley, because they made that decision, whether it's the people I know who moved from Saskatchewan, Alberta, or further east, or moved from the coast, and why they moved here. Those professionals with lived experience make a powerful statement about the advantage of being able to. Now, I know, your pastor career, they had a house a kilometer from my place. Yeah, she could talk about slipping on in her kayak out onto the lake any morning she chooses when it's calm and peaceful. Those champions are the group of voices who really instill on something, the advantage of living here as opposed to an individual. And to not use those people, maybe you do, but not to use those people as a red carpet experience, I think would be a mistake. Again. So again, this is where I think conversation locally needs to be had. Ontario Health should sit with them and talk about, because worse would be having somebody who lives in Kelowna trying to convince somebody how nice it is to live here versus if they say, well, move to Kelowna and you go to Yalta.
Well, just before you continue, Kathy has that network.
Yeah.
When a physician comes here, the physician is toured around, wined and dined, doing all the things that you say she is. So, you brought it up, but it is happening. So I don't think we need to go further down that road. Question here today is, do you guys want a strat plan or don't? Because there's two ways to do it. You're worried about a budget, but would you agree to a strat plan if it was budgeted some other way, or if it was included in the 875?
If I may,
Yeah.
I would be more open and open-minded to the strat plan if I could see it laid out. What is it we're trying to do? What is it we're trying to achieve? What are the outcomes? But it is just talk of strat plans. It is not okay, this is what we're going to try to do, and this is what we want to try to achieve with this amount of money that we're asking for. So I'm going to say no to it right now. And I will say again that there's disruptors in our world today that you need to be paying attention to, whether we like them or not. It's happening. So for us to be looking at 10 and 15 years down the road, no, No, the whole world changes in 3 now. So without a particular outline and a business case for the strat plan, I can't support it.
I'll let Mike comment, but in 10 or 15 years, or even 3 years, we still need doctors here. We still need their knowledge. We still need that service in our community. No matter what AI tells us, we still need that. That doesn't change.
And if I may now, no, that's fine. You made a comment on my comment. If I may now, I'm not saying that we abandon this program at all.
Good.
I'm saying, let's just keep it what it's doing. Just keep it the same. 25, carry it over to 26, and let's move forward. And hopefully then we can open up further conversation, open up our minds to what's there and out in front of us. The strat plan thing, let me see what you got in mind. Let's have it all laid out, and let's see what the ROI is going to be if we spend that money.
Go ahead, Mike.
Through the chair, so the layout of the strat plan is in the update report. There's 7 bullet points and items clarifying what that you'd be working on. So I just wanted to direct you back to, I did provide that outline in the. So it's basically, you know, working for planning for the sustainability aligned recruitment with governance funding and service expectations. Understand the role of locums versus permanent positions that were brought up with a comment. Anticipate retirements, growth, and change demand. So really understand what do you need, how many people need positions. So everything, all the comments that were made at this table is actually listed there, as that would be part of the planning exercise. Flush that out. So, you know, that's just wanted to direct you back to that.
I appreciate that. If you're waiting for me to respond to that, yes, I do. But as always, we get seriously flooded with information and it takes time to digest this. But I'm going to still suggest that we just stay with status quo. It's working fine for us. I'm not interested in asking taxpayers for more money.
Dr. Tierney.
I must say, some of the work that Mike's been doing is really valuable for our community. The fire services, the advisory committee, and this is just another example of some really good planning and getting ahead of things. And I really value the work that you're doing on this. And so I'm saying move it to a vote. Let's vote on it, see where we stand. We've talked about it enough.
It'll be just you and me, Dr. Vandenberg, because Dr. Jack was not a contributor, so.
Yeah.
I would put it to a vote. I was in favor of having a strategic plan.
Chair, procedurally at committee, all the people in the committee would vote. You will not see me raise my hand either way, which by default.
Fair enough.
Okay, but at committee, if you were to call an S108 meeting, I wouldn't vote because I'm not a committee member.
Fair enough.
Can I just note you haven't said, there's no motion in this agenda at this time.
Well, I'll make a motion that we stay with the 2025 budget. We move it to 2026. That then precludes strategic planning.
So for discussion purposes, I would need a seconder for that motion. Hearing none, that's not a motion that's going to go anywhere.
I was expecting that.
So I would then request the motion that we proceed with the with planning for a strategic plan and carry that with the existing budget that's there. So that motion made by Director Tierney. I will second that motion.
Debate. So you're asking for the public to invest into a strategic plan to develop an understanding as to how our relationship is with the physicians in the province. You are ignoring the responsibility of the province and what they're supposed to be doing in these roles. And you are suggesting that we have the answers. I think you need to think about that before you ask the public to invest into something that I don't believe is our responsibility. And we're taking it on. We are accepting a download. So that is my concern and comment on this motion.
Director Tierney.
Yeah, I really hear what you're saying, Kelly, but But I think that the momentum that we've got going in Creston is admired and a lot of people are looking to us. How did you do it? And part of that's getting ahead of it. Having a strategic plan is, I don't think that's a huge investment. I think it's a very worthwhile investment to just keep the momentum going and to be on the leading edge of how you do it.
I will remind you that the program that's been laid out, that Kathy is working on delivering and working with us, is doing great as it is. It's not incumbent upon us to try to make it better. It's doing great already. So, I mean, there's a lot of tension out there for how it's not a lot of money. Okay, but you start adding up all these services and pretty soon you've got, you're asking the taxpayers to trust us in deliberating and talking about what is the true benefit for their investment. In my point of view, I think it's not the right time while the turmoil and what's happening fiscally in the province to invest this kind of money. We stay with status quo. We know that it's working brilliantly, and we move on. So
I'll call a vote then. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. And I think this is the case where people see tangible results with what we're doing. And there's a frustration among the participating positions in this whole process because they don't feel that IHA is assisting in giving our community what we need, but we are succeeding because we have implemented this over and above. And it's been in place for a long time and it's benefited our community. And the 87.5, I think we'd agree that it's money well spent because of what we've done in the past. So I prefer we keep that momentum going and involve our working group as much as we can.
just for clarity, what is the final number then to S108?
Well, if I could, so there's no increase to S108 for this program. I'm not speaking for anything else, but the requisition will stay 87.5 because we'll use the surplus from not attending that conference last year to pay for that strategic plan. So there's no increase to the service itself for this. I'm not speaking for one way, just for this aid. So the requisition amount would remain, or the amount for the program would remain at 87.5.
Okay, so you've chosen to reinvest the surplus, that's taxpayer dollars, into a strategic plan. Okay, thank you.
There's a nuance here. The surplus that's being utilized or consumed is the surplus held by the town of Creston through the amount you've granted them for this project. So the surplus showing in the regional district book is a different surplus. The surplus in the regional district budget, you built a very large surplus in S108 and you've been ramping it down over a number of years. Last year, your cost to run the service was actual 446,800, and you only taxed 296. You taxed 180, 190,000 less last year than it cost to operate the service. What you did was you used 146,000 of surplus to breach part of that. And then you had some grants coming from two sources of grant and external contributions. So your surplus in the S108 has been accumulated over years. And this is, according to the books today, the last year you use any of that surplus, which is in the hands of the Evan Regional District, the last 50,000 you're burning through this year. Next year, you're going to see $63,000 projected taxation increase because you burned that surplus. What you've been giving the town through the grants this year would be slightly less. But the money that they're really looking to sanction for use is being held internally by town. It's part of what they did not need to spend last year, as Mike explained, because of one conference that was missed. So they're holding S108 money in their own reserve. And so this is an understanding that it'd be nice if it was a little more transparent, like alternative water for fire services, money that's held in the town's reserve and not in ours. So you're talking two different reserves, and the impact on taxpayer next year will not be because of this study, but it'll be because you have not funded for several years the cost of actually delivering this cluster of services. You have not funded it through taxation. You funded it largely through a massive previously accumulated surplus. And to analyze that, we'd have to go back to Creston Valley Chamber of Commerce and building and rentals. There's a whole litany of reasons why you accumulate the surplus. That's one of them. But they're different surpluses. So you've really just sanctioned town to go ahead and do something slightly different with their physician recruitment pot of money this year than they've done in previous years. That will be to develop a strategy.
Okay, I would really like to move on at this point. We'll get on with the direct report, Creston Valley Tourism Society. Jesse.
No, there's no report. This is a director's report. This is just bringing the information that's been provided by the tourism to the group directors. And so as directors, this is a new procedure that we have agreed to bring that type of information so that we can pull it and have a chat with them. We need to.
All right, so you brought this forward basically for information.
It is.
Correct, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I see one of the more significant points that have been brought to light is the turmoil within the international soccer fleet management, which is a little distressing to me because I was there boots on the ground when Alex formed entities formed. And back then, Idaho was really the major contributor making that happen, making that work. So I'm encouraged that the Creston Tourism Board has allowed Jesse to continue kind of an interim administrative role. Hopefully he thinks for 3 hours a month or 3 hours a day to keep it going. But it is something for us to keep our eyes on. What I don't see is the involvement of the Kootenay Lake Chamber. And the Kootenay Lake Chamber had a key community champion pass that has derailed some of the meetings. In the last meeting they held a week or so ago, they decided to be closed to the directors, so I wasn't able to attend. But there is a need to re-engage robustly. Kootenay Chamber, Balfour through Nelson, along with Creston, were key to making the international soccer group work. The fact they're not going to publish the brochure this year, maybe they will publish the map, that's significant. The amount of cross-border traffic that drove initially was massive. I wouldn't want to see it drop today because I think we still want the Americans to realize we're open and we're friendly. So yeah, that was, I really appreciated seeing the number of, the evolution between the different reports of what's happening to the IS. And hopefully, yeah, as they say, the other chambers will all sit down together.
So to that comment, I have, as the chair of CSLAC, I have brought that forward as an initiative to consider further dialogue and discussion. It has not worked itself into any agenda as yet, but in light of this additional information, uncertain as to how that could draw interest from our rural partners in CSLAC, but it's something that I would contemplate. And I'm interested in where this is going to go as well, because I see the value in it, and I see that the investment from our American partners has rewarded us in Canada, and we haven't really done a good job of recognizing that. And so,
and at one time we did have really good engagement with the head of the Destination BC, when she was out here and discussed the value of this, and that is what's also drifted away. And I should mention, this is important to Caslow, because the big outcome there was the motorcycle. And so then it became important to do Denver, Silverton, Spokane, because that traffic it drives, it's not just the soccer loop, but that motorcycle. Now, who would want to go down to West Arm? You can go up over Fish Lake and Maryland. So it has a fairly broad economic impact.
So this is basically for information, and we'll receive it that way. Yeah, go ahead.
so I would like in that group of information documents, I also would like to bring to surface 7.3, there is a marketing sheet that or a brochure that the tourism group has put forward on a couple of occasions now. And it is specifically, it's in your agenda as 7.3, and it speaks to the Goat River and its park. And my question around that again is, it supposes on page 2 that it's supported by the Town of Creston Regional District of Central Kootenai Parks and Recreation Master Plan, Town of Creston Parks Master Plan, and Trails Master Plan. I don't know where this came from, and I don't know if there's any direct RDCK authority that needs to be given for this. There's an assumption in there that it's supported by RDCK, but we have never had a proper conversation around what it's for, what its intent is, why it's there, and now it's being circulated in the public. So I thought I would bring that to the table for discussion and maybe understand kind of where it came from, because I don't know.
Oh, well, I comment on the town's part. Just the regional district of Central Kootenai has developed a trails and parks master plan. And it's very clear in that master plan that the town of Creston regional park access to water is the #1 priority that they identified through consultation with the public. And this is an advocacy piece by a member of our community that we're well aware of. And she did alter this statement from a previous one to comply with basically that parks and trails master plan. And I look at it as a really true statement from the reports that the RDCK has completed.
So and I've read through the master plan, Parks Master Plan for RDCK. Please remind me, but this is really calling attention to the importance of co-managing now with Yakanuki, with Lower Kootenai Band. That's what the intent of this document is saying. I have not reviewed that master plan to, in fact, see that it was one of the recommendations that directly tied that relationship together, because this is now taking that good intent of our master plan and suggesting that it is directly in relationship to our partnership with Yakanuki. And so it's taken a little bit of privilege upon itself to be able to make that statement. So I will do my diligence and go back and revisit that master plan, but I do not remember it being as this document is suggesting, or this brochure is suggesting, that was an outcome from that master plan that was created probably 6 years ago now. So 6 years ago. Our Parks and Rec master plan was before our time as an elected official.
Well, the original document perhaps, but it's been updated and approved in the last year. And we're
Yeah, so I think if we could ask staff, maybe the clarification I would like to see is this, zeroing on one part, the document, the brochure refers to an Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area, IPCA, co-managed with the Yakanuki and supported by local partners. So co-managed between what entities? Is there a management agreement that we're unaware of? Because it says and supported by partners. And do we have a partnership agreement on this? So this kind of implies documented support, or is it just trying to imply loose support? Well, because the master plans we have created are not as specific as this. They're not as specific as stating that it would be an Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area, IPCA, which is a specific designation. So I guess it would be helpful if staff could show us, source document that backs up what is in IPCA. And then maybe just to clarify with the author of this, do they feel there's some documented partnership that we've already entered into? Because I think we're a few steps back to that, at least say 6 to 8 months, looking at other works in stream. So this is premature.
I don't think it implies that, that the IPCA, strategy is what's not being applied here. I don't read it that way. Just, I think we have an obligation in this valley to consult with the Indigenous population as to plans we have to set aside lands for regional park. And again, this is just a local advocate, so I don't think we can take it upon ourselves to say that what she's doing is wrong. She's not speaking on behalf of the RDCK. She's just reading documents and is a supporter of the community looking for protected areas, which we should be consulting with and working together with the Indigenous community to plan for those areas.
So to clarify through staff, we have no board direction to work towards IPCA.
No.
And that should be a starting conversations. And then the board, in order to make any movement in that direction, should understand what is an IPCA. And then whether or not there are any other documents, partnership agreements, or anything else that we will pertain to. Our dilemma could be that land acquisition and parks development is a closed topic for us. So just like a little clarification that what would this lead towards and what have we committed to today? Should we make a formal commitment?
I was just going to raise that up, is that there is some opportunity to clarify this and to have staff support us, but more importantly, to as a board to understand and accept what IPCA is. We've had some co-management workshop, so it's just being delivered to us. There is that opportunity to discuss what that looks like in terms of an agreement. But that is all steps that have to be done. This is assuming steps are already made. The risk that I see here is that it gives public the assumption that we are working and have created those procedures and agreements. In fact, we have not. So we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Regardless of what the intent is, there's a practical process that we should be following. And this is making an assumption that we've already committed to something that we have not as yet. So
I don't think this does at all. I think this is pointing out one person's pain of what would be a valuable direction to go. I can say with my conversations with the Yakanuki, they have no interest in establishing an IPCA in the valley at this time. So, they're speaking for themselves. They're not interested in establishing IPCA. So this is just one person's, I guess, background, thinking that, it would be one direction they should think about.
It's entitled as an opportunity, not an agreement. So it's her vision of an opportunity that's included in a brochure here.
Yeah, so, she's just suggesting.
It's not written, again, as a policy or an agreement. If we need staff to do something to clarify this, I think we need to set a direction to staff. But we're not the originators of the brochure. This brochure originated because of the vision of having park on the North Gold River and states the opportunity there. If we want staff to get involved in this for clarification, then let's do a direction to staff. Other than that,
Chair Director Watson.
yeah, Chair Watson, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. A few points of clarification. The brochure itself, if anyone was to request something to be done, it needs to note whose brochure this is. There's no designation what organization wrote this brochure, so that leads to a lot of confusion. In terms of what's listed in it, as Director Tierney noted, the Rex Parks and Trail does acknowledge, and that has been adopted, that there's interest to work with First Nations within the region. So that's not an incorrect statement. Nothing in this brochure is stating we've entered an agreement. The only thing that I think is incorrect, and Craig or Tricia can correct me if I'm wrong, but the notion that the Tanaka traditional use study is an RDCK document, I believe is incorrect. That's a Tanaka document. It's not an RDCK one. So that'd be the
Through
only
the chair.
clarification needed. And then one other note, sorry, Craig, is in terms of agreements that the board has given direction on, we have given direction to establish a memorandum of understanding with Yakanuki, and that is still in the works and that is on the books. And we'll see more of that as we move through the Groat River watershed work. Hope that helps. And thanks, Craig. Yeah, if you can clarify.
Yeah, thanks, Director Watson. Yeah, through the chair, that the TUS was essentially commissioned by the RDCK, but it is a document that is the Tanaha have ownership over.
So if
Are
I
we
can
looking
just
for any
follow, just
Go
to note,
ahead, go ahead.
yeah, thanks. So I think there's only two corrections with this brochure. Number one, it's not an RDCK brochure, and I don't think staff should get involved because there's nothing here that is indicating anything incorrect. But it should have who owns this brochure and who wrote it, because that can lead to confusion. And RDCK owning that TUS document needs to be corrected. That is not an RDCK document.
So I appreciate Amy's input on that, and that's really where this conversation needed to be, because our tourism group has an expectation that, or an understanding that there is some levels of support in here, there is some degree of accuracies. So now we have had the opportunity to table and specifically speak to that, and so that's the importance of this conversation.
Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for bringing it before us.
So do we need the document as is or go back to the originator just to make some adjustments? What's your desire?
If I may, it came to us from one of our groups that we're with, that we fund. So I think that person is here to be able to hear this conversation. We'll appropriately take it back to the board and share those thoughts. But as far as us acting on anything further, I don't think there's anything to do.
Okay, so again, this is your involvement here is basically because you're part of the information. So we're doing this to inform ourselves and have this brief discussion. The only question I have for you though is there is great concern about the Selkirk Loop, and I see that in the report here. And you're going to continue to be involved. I guess I just hope we can keep the Selkirk Loop going, because it does draw a lot of people here, and there's value to it. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone, the conversation here today and the information that you discussed, and happy to know that the International Soccer Loop is appreciated and supported by everyone here at the table today, and I'll certainly relay that back to the loop. So and just for clarification, I'm currently the acting chair and treasurer, so that's my role and responsibility, not administrating officially anyways, but it's certainly, as you know, when you don't have a staff person, that the creep of responsibility does happen. But yeah, we will be meeting sometime in the near future to kind of look at path forward for the loop and discuss what our options are. And I think hopefully in an ideal world where it would carry the organization forward. And just to Dr. Jackman's point, one of our representatives on the board right now is Peter Boynes, the director for Nelson Community Lake Tourism. So he's at the table kind of representing the shore in Nelson, but certainly would be great to have more engagement from our partner communities along the loop, including the shore. And I'll definitely perhaps do some outreach to some of our other members as well on the East Shore. And regarding the one pager, of course, I'm happy to provide any clarification on with Director Jackman or Director Vandenberg on what clarifications you'd like me to provide back to our board as well.
Just a small statement, my son is one of the organizers of one of the more popular motorcycle rallies around the loop, the FXR rally that had over 60 people last year join them at Toad Rock there, and this year it looks like it's going to be doubled. Most of those people are from the States, so he's bringing a lot of people in for loop.
Right, let's move on to public library. Again, that's informational, correct?
Correct.
There's nothing there you wanted to bring
No,
up.
it's certainly open to explore, or it's just for information.
Okay. It's a lot of detail there as well. I appreciate that.
Well, if I may, it's fairly new. We're probably going to do a much better job of being able to communicate what's happening in our community. It's probably a little bit more than necessary, but it's a really good start.
Yeah.
Because that's trying to understand as the representative sitting on that board, how do you communicate, what's really happening? You've got to start with some sort of a base. So as with the tourism piece, there's probably more information than necessary, but I think it's a good place to start. It certainly generated a good conversation, and that's the whole idea.
And let's hope that enough people read our agendas and the information and to benefit from it. So we'll move to economic development services in the Creston Valley. The report is here. Stu's not here. I don't know if there's any other supplemental information or questions. Start with that, I guess. Director Jackman.
Sure. I did email Stuart, CEO Horn, back and forth a little bit on this. Well, I guess my primary concern is that, it's nice to see a summary of conversation. That's fair. But then it jumps from there to the expression of interest with the scope of work, which I don't think is two questions in my mind. Do we want to throw all these eggs in one basket? First question. And if all these eggs, which include physician recruitment and community event coordination, tourism initiatives, special projects, business outreach, et cetera, EAP, if all of those are in there, how are we going to revisit our funding model? Because Area A is not involved with all those eggs, as we had our previous conversation. So I don't know that we're ready to settle on this as a scope of work, and then it's one shot fills all of these roles right away, because that's what this is doing. It's a lot of work for any entity to do. My other comments were much of this work, the strategic economic action partnership type stuff, personality goes a long way because it's a connector. It's the engagement. That's a certain skill set. The same skill set may or may not apply to, say, physician recruitment, but it's an entirely different realm. So merging those kind of things, I don't know if that's wise. I don't think we're settled on, I'm not settled on the scope. So we can refer this, different discussion. I doubt if we could dissect it here and now.
Director Van.
So I don't disagree with Director Jackman's comments. There's a lot of moving parts that are up there, and the whole exercise is to try to bring that together. What's that going to look like under the governance umbrella, that sort of thing. And maybe it is requiring a little bit more thought and working through. But I don't see what the recommendation is for an expression of interest to be put out there. And I do believe that if we had community champions put forward an expression of interest, they may cover off those sort of things. They may wish to explore or not explore certain things, put on their own parameters, which would be advantageous for us to consider. So while the outline of the scope suggests all these things, the expression of interest may come back to us to say that we can or cannot act on that scope, which is good information, good feedback. So I don't know that I see any harm in allowing the EOI to go out. And because I'd really be looking forward to what it would look, what it could bring back to us for further information.
If we do that, it needs to be very clear to every group that we don't expect them to cover everything then, which would be unusual to go up with an expression of interest call where you say, can you fulfill all or some of these mandated items in the scope? Otherwise, some of the groups that could just excel at one or two of these things might say, well, we can't do both three. Maybe you can do two, but we're not sure. We'll just step back and we'll end up with, like we've had before, maybe one proponent struggling to see if they can piece this together.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we go up with this to not come back with piecemeal expressions of interest where we say, well, they're not qualified because they failed to meet all items identified in the scope of work. So if you can pull that off, that's a little different from a normal expression of interest call. Expression of partial interest.
I think our starting point, though, is to invite the expressions of interest and see where that takes us. We can then examine that, see whether that's exactly what we want or not, but you know, I would agree with you that we should proceed with the recommendation that we look for our expression of interest in it and then evaluate after we get it.
Would we maybe be better off to break the scope of work into 2 or 3 categories? Scope work 1, category A, EAP.
Yeah.
Category 2, special projects.
Yeah, I got you, Lee.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I actually disagree with Director Jackman. I believe you can write, if that input is provided accordingly to prior writing the expression of interest, you can write the expression of interest that you allow for partial or all services to be delivered, right? So I think I see the expression of interest as a process where you identify interested and capable parties, but B, as well, have that communication, what they are able and interested to deliver. So I think it really depends how the expression of interest is written, and is not mandating that all services need to be provided as part of that, because that could exclude some of the interested parties.
So that is what I'm asking for, that it's clear. But if we have a group of these scope of work items that we need to have in one bucket, we should say that. And then the rest would be, what can you do?
So you're suggesting we revise the document expression of interest to capture what you're saying?
Well, the cover page, invitation letter is absolutely critical. I guess that's one. That's what we just referred to. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, there's 2, 4, 6, 7 bullets. Are there any things that we would want to have broken out? So, implement EAP strategic plans combined with track and reporting KPIs aligned with EAP goals. So it should be together for sure. Would one other be aligned with that? And then that would be Group A scope of work, Group B scope of work.
I'm sorry, are you speaking to 4.6 right now?
Speaking to the attachment, which is the
attachment?
what would be going out, expression of interest.
Okay, thanks. And specifically under the scope of work, now that I'm there.
Yeah, almost undoubtedly. Some groups would be scared off by this unless we are very clear, as Lee stated, that we're looking for portions of this potentially. And then given that, would it make sense to maybe reorganize the order of this and say these 2 or 3 items go together and the rest of them, we just want to know whether or not you can provide services combined or independent.
So I would be in favor of that flexibility. I think the flexibility factor piece needs to be there. We really want to get the feedback from our community as to capacity. And this is an opportunity to understand what potential capacity is. If we, as Director Jackman had pointed out, if we wrap it up that this is it, you have to respond back. We may not get a response back, and therefore we lose some intel, some opportunity to be flexible. This is a process that we're going to work on to develop a model of governance that will be taking care of itself for the future. So let's not cut it off right now from bringing back some good ideas that could be out there that we don't even know about.
So would you frame that in a direction as to how to alter this? Because
No, but I think Uli could.
I think we leave it to whoever's gonna draft this cover letter, and if they wanna clean up the scope of work a little bit. Because clearly connected items are disconnected by other bullets. Tourism, should that stand alone? Would that be included in the same bullet as physician recruitment? I would think not. I would think those are not complementary skills. So maybe we need 11 bullets, 3 that clustered around B, some of the other standalone, not the this, that, et cetera type approach. So that we can break this down to digestible tasks that an entity within community could say, I can do that. I can do bullet 7. And we can maybe do bullet 8. This is clustering too much.
okay, so if we make that request, that means it would have to come back before us for approval, correct? Which would, again, slow the process down, but it's taken a while to get to this part. But
If we accept this as a general scope of work and allow staff the latitude to maybe separate some of the points out for clarity, I'm good with that. And then they come back with the cover letter. I'm sure it's going to be an understandable cover letter. So,
yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with Director Jackman, but I'm looking to Uli. Is that something that that you're okay with as well?
I'm
You're
totally,
gonna have to do the.
I'm totally okay with it because Stuart will have to do it. I'm not involved with it.
Well, that's all I need to hear.
Okay, so I guess that's the communication back to Stuart is that, I guess the scope of work is just more broken down into categories, correct? Instead of having 7, especially the one we're talking about now, it's a combination of tourism, special projects.
and physicians.
That one's the one you want broken into pieces more than any other, correct?
I think so.
Okay.
I would move the recommendation with, knowing that staff will clean up the wording of the staff directed issue expression of interest as per the agenda.
Okay.
I would second that. I like how it's written personally, but I would second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried, so the recommendation will go forward with the suggested changes that we've discussed, and we'll move on again. So next is the draft financial plans for economic development at 8.2.
So through the chair, do you want us to open up any questions that we may have on S107/S108 in this regard?
Sure.
Okay. So if I may, I will just start out by just a high level S108. So it's really, it's complicated to understand what all beneficiaries, the funder recipients are when it comes to talking about that which is in S108. But on a higher level, my question would be simply from a 2025 budget to 2026 budget, it's a $48,000 increase to the requisition. And so it would be nice to hear a summary, a story as to why we're there. We've talked a lot about the individual elements within, but a reminder to what it is, what we're trying to achieve with that increase. And that's, as I've seen it written on this particular plan, which is dated February 12th. So is that an unfair question?
If I might, I think I stated it earlier. S108 accumulated a very large surplus. I think they're in the order of 300 some thousand. I didn't bring all my old books, but I got them all at home. And so you decided to run that surplus out over several years, which was a good way to do it. And you've come to the point where you've never, in the last few years, you have never taxed enough to support the services you're trying to deliver. You've relied on surplus. It's almost gone. So now the taxes have to start going up. Half of your bump this year will be the 50,000 surplus carried from last. The other half of the bump will be the tax increase. And next year will all be tax increase unless you happen to inadvertently run another surplus. But this was by design to run down that surplus over X number of years and eventually push the requisition level back up to the true cost to operate your service as you've currently defined it. That's why I'm poking around questions like, you need to keep spending the same amount of money on the components of this service as you have traditional challenge.
So I think what would be helpful in the future is when we're talking about services like S108 is to have more of a story imprinted into it, not just a set of numbers that Barry Jackman's really good at understanding because he's been doing this for years and years and years. It would be more like along the lines of, here are the funding recipients that you're talking about in S108. Here's the story about them. And to Director Jackman's point is that we've been dipping into that reserve or that surplus for X amount of time. And now you are at a point where you're going to have to requisition that back to what the true cost of all those elements that are within 108 is. We don't have that breakdown. Every time we get together, we ask questions about this, that, that thing, but it's never, all we get is a spreadsheet document. And if we are not diligent in our note keeping, I suppose, and maybe that's where we need to go, but I don't think that should be our job. I think that is an opportunity for to have staff tell us the more wholesome story and the separate elements and those things that are affecting that budget. So that's just an opportunity for the future.
I do know when this was discussed at board, we did discuss whether we should be drawing those surpluses down, what the implications are. And we did have those discussions. Many of us did not support drawing down surplus, some did. But this is the results of doing that. I don't know what else to add to this. We're not going to change that number now.
No, I'm not pursuing that we ought to, but I think when it comes to a budget, here is your budget for the year. You either are able to perform within the budget or not. If you haven't spent all the money, that surplus doesn't necessarily, does that really need to get pulled? Because the following year here is the budget. Here are the things that we want to deliver. Here's what the cost is going to be, less the surplus from the following year. It's almost like we're developing a reserve for some of these things that we shouldn't be doing. They're either acting on their own in their budget, they're either performing to that level or they're not. And why are we cushioning it with a reserve on? Now I get we need reserves for some areas, but on these are a number of items going into S108. These are standalone budgets that should stand alone and support themselves. That's what we should be looking at, and not banking on the idea that it's that safety factor of the reserve of the surplus that we keep building. That's kind of false. That's not telling how that area is performing on the budget that they have proposed.
So I think where we've applied the sort of the rationale as to where we need maybe you call it a stability reserve is where we have high volatility costs. So currently for the tourism center function is very stable because Craig's people and the whole cohort look after the staff. The staffing levels are predetermined and fairly stable. The volatility is in just the odd thing, like we've lost our service provider for economic action partnership, or the one-offs like the position recruitment where a conference was missed. So there's always some of the elements of what you're packaging have volatility, and some of them are very stable. So you could say 80% of what you're funding is very stable, and of the volatility, you may try to carry an annual operating surplus of 10, 20,000 or whatever to manage that volatility. That's why we've set, stabilization funds for like building inspection, highly volatile based on economic swings up and down. So there's justification maybe for a small amount of money to be pushed ahead. To me, I don't like seeing the money pushed ahead, you currently speak. It's better if you just simply create a small stabilization reserve. If there's a one-time, you put the $20,000, whatever there, you don't use it in your annual budget. You budget to the cost of service delivery, not using that cushion to go up and down because you want to look like a hero in election year or whatever and pretend to reduce taxes. You didn't, you just skewed the picture. So you could ask that a reserve be created for S108 for a stabilization reserve, just like building inspection. Pick a number, put it there, leave it alone. And then zero base your rest of your budget based on what service delivery is expected to cost. So we do for all our big services. S224, we're told, here's what it's going to cost to do what you asked us to do. You say, okay, here's the capital reserve, that's different. So it's easy to do. I did have an S107 question, and it's a project management directive question. I am hoping we're finished with that CRTC grant and fiber optic. We're still holding more than I thought we would this year back from Castle Implement, $74,000. Is that hold back to see final reporting? We're going to see a as-built with the actual buried cable locations on our property and transfer stations, water and treatment plant. What actual works, is that work being done this year, or is that really just hold back, waiting for documentation? We pay up the balance. If you don't know now, I can wait for an answer later.
Through the chair, that's not my project.
That's AJ right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm hoping we're done with that, because that has, pulling in $800,000 on those service like that is all cost us a roller coaster of surplus deficit. I'll leave that then for later. Peppered last minute.
Chair, it is my understanding the project is complete and these are final payouts subject to outstanding small items or holdbacks. But what I've seen so far, without talking to AJ, the project is complete.
So then actually, acting CAO, you're the person, I hope you're requiring as-builts. Where do these cables cross our transfer stations? Are we gonna end up digging them up later? Where does it parallel or cross our water line for Briandale? Like that kind of documentation is fairly critical. Last night at the community meeting, I was peppered with questions over that I said 99% of that is Ministry of Transportation work, but some of it is ours.
It is my understanding, if I may, through the chair, when we were in Roundel for the surface water issues, I raised the same question and I was led to believe that we have received the drawings for these lines.
Excellent.
Chair Watson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Director Jackman Kin works with our GIS department, and anytime they lay lines, they provide that to the GIS department to ensure that it's all been documented. And then they also include other assets that they find when they're digging. So that's been their general practice, and it might just not be at the operational level for staff that are here at this time. But you can always check in with them, but that's been their standard. Like when they dug up Ainsworth, we found out tons of infrastructure that no one had documented. So it's actually a bit of a benefit that they do that. It'd be good to verify that they're still doing that and that GIS has now got more documentation on infrastructure that is critical to know about, but isn't always in our department's knowledge.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? Let's go ahead.
So just want to, excuse me, explore the potential direction to staff on our S108 and maybe S107 budget. Director Jackman pulled up an interesting feature for me in S108, and that is perhaps we I would like to have staff look into, how we would, adopt a stabilization reserve with a certain amount of funds going forward. But, and also itemizing all the beneficiaries that sit in, S-108 at the same time. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to request that for our future dialogue, future budget sessions, when it comes to, conversations around items like S-108. So,
Sorry to interrupt.
I don't know.
I noted Yev
Did that.
left the meeting, and Yev really needs to be the one engaging in this discussion, especially on those requests. So I'm not sure, maybe Uli, you could text Yev and just ask, can he please rejoin, and then he can answer these questions and engage on that direction?
So I give it first try. So if the question was, can we establish a reserve instead of having accumulated operating surpluses that are carried forward? The answer is yes, we can. We have done it recently in other services too on staff's request. So that can be established. The question is always, we should establish a purpose of these reserves, right? So otherwise, we handle the reserves the same way we do the surpluses. So we should be clear when, why, and how much of reserves we establish. But the answer in regards to can we establish a reserve dedicated to the service is yes.
So if I may, then if the group is in agreement, perhaps the recommendation to staff is, could you bring us back something after budget season that we can look at and explore so that we understand the detail of the benefits or not the benefits around it? That would really help us with our budget. Just one element to help us with our budget deliberations for the future, because it is confusing. If that's acceptable, is that direction to staff or is that a motion?
I think that's just a request to, through you, I would say.
Yeah, we can take that as an action item to follow up. I will have that discussion with Yev to bring some information back the next.
And then that action item will fall under action item.
Okay. Let's move to 8.3 then. Special events discussion.
Through the chair, this came up as for a specific item that came to staff, and I won't speak to that unless necessary as part of this discussion, but just as a for information for the committee, is that staff in this service and in other rec services in the RDCK deliver special events and programs as part of our mandate to deliver recreation and park services within those service bylaws, and based on the needs of the community, the benefit of the community. So we try to model our service delivery according to what we believe the community needs or wants. And a lot of those opportunities are scalable within the approved financial plan. And we also built the model according to the success of the events year over year, and our models evolve over time. And from time to time, we get it right. We continue with that model. So an event that we operate, or we're partners in operating, or facilitate in operating, if it's successful, we usually use participation and benefit to the community as a measuring model, and then we'll repeat those. But then, of course, those can evolve and from time to time change. We do some of these events on our own, so we'll plan seasonal events. So we'll have a Valentine's or a Halloween or even a St. Patrick's Day event where people can come and take part in the facility and in a themed event. And those are usually supported by staff, but also supported through admissions. So those aren't always free of charge. Some of the events that we do partner on, including the Blossom Fest runs. The Blossom Fest is an annual event in the Creston Valley. It takes place over a weekend, and we operate a run in the valley that our staff go and we have volunteers and we run a 5 and 10K run. So that's another event that we do. And then some of the other events we facilitate. So for example, Canada Day 2 years ago, the Chamber of Commerce came and said, we'd like to have an event on Canada Day, July 1st. And we facilitated that, provided staff to that. And that was at the discretion of the committee and the board to provide staffing for that. And some of the events require additional support through community partnerships. So we have one event, Bike Rodeo, that has happened pre-pandemic and then in 2022 and it was available where we had different model from year over year, where we had a community group, the 0 to 6 Creston Valley Early Years came in as a partner with staffing, and certainly their demographic came to our event and turned it into something much bigger than it had been in the past. And that's, that's our opportunities right now. We have in the past had commercial involvement in some of these events, and I was the manager here from 2020 to 2022. And so, certainly during the pandemic, those opportunities were few and far between. But before that, it's my understanding that commercial partnerships were done on an ad hoc or an as needed basis. And we had solicited sponsorships and prizes and donations, et cetera, through recognition, through marketing and advertising of the events. And there were loose partnerships, and I'll use quote unquote partnerships in those situations. And those have since gone away because we recognize that, and certainly with the work that Trish has done on the sponsorship policy, that practice wasn't sound with local government practices. And so we're trying to make sure that that's all done in a fair and equitable way. And so we are, and staff in this facility and other facilities that operate these events, they do use discretion and judgment and apply RDCK policies and practices. And certainly, they look at the models that are successful and they will implement those events. And so that's where we're at as it relates to an overview of how we operate events and why we operate events. And I can take any questions specific or general if you'd like.
I see that Amy's hands up.
Chair Watson, your hand is up again.
Yeah, sorry for all the engagement here. I just wanted to clarify because we actually have a special events bylaw and there's a distinct difference. So I just wanted us to for my own clarification, I believe what Craig is referencing and what the item on the agenda is related to recreation and in-house special events under that banner, and that the special events bylaw is actually related to those events that are operated by external parties, and it currently only applies in Area H. So I just wanted to make sure being distinct in that difference.
Through the chair, this is specific to services that the recreation staff provide in and around this facility, correct?
So basically, in a nutshell, what I'm hearing from you, Craig, is that the special events that you're referring to are predominantly internal, managed and operated by the auspices of the staff. And if I'm hearing you correctly, for whatever reason, the external commercial partnerships don't align very well. There's not that opportunity for our members in our business community to participate with an RDCK internal program or event. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through the chair, there are opportunities now with the sponsorship policy that was drafted and adopted by the board. Those opportunities exist. It's a very formal process, as you can imagine, and there are very, it's very good guidance on how we could apply sponsorships in and around public facilities, certainly recreation complex, related to free swims, free skates, free admission, that kind of thing. But it also references special events, and the staff have the authority to determine what those sponsorships and commercial partnerships, loosely using that term partnership, what that could look like as it supports our events. And, I would think that to offset costs for the taxpayers, if there was a commercial enterprise that wanted to have a title sponsor of an event, that opportunity exists. We would just have to go through that formal process. And what we had in the past was very ad hoc and very individual and not really fair and equitable. And I think that's what we've gotten away from that. And now we're moving towards a more formal process that that if we went out and asked for a sponsorship for a particular reason, we have the authority to do that. But if it was a unique situation, we couldn't just draft negotiated terms that didn't align with certainly best practices. So we couldn't give away sponsorship of a major community event for a fee that was below market or below what other people would be willing to pay. And we'd also have to be mindful of who else would be interested in that. So we couldn't single out a particular commercial enterprise for that. We would want to make sure it's offered fairly. As well, it also gives us the opportunity where those groups come to us and say, I'd like to sponsor an event. We can evaluate that as well. So those opportunities exist, but it's just not as straightforward as it used to be pre-pandemic.
So in the situation that brought this up, is it just now a matter of applying that policy to that situation, or any situation similar?
Well, I think with this particular event, I think that's the feedback that, you know, with you have partners in operating, you have partners that are essentially a cash sponsorship, you know, as a to leverage marketing. So to put your name on an event, or even, you know, I'll use a hypothetical event where a group wanted to come in and rent the skate park, for example, and have you know, if that was DC shoes, for example, or something, they said, we want to, you know, put DC shoes all over the taxpayers, the taxpayer skate park property. We could establish a valuation of that and then put it into a contract and say, sure, you can have your event and we'll support it and we'll charge you this much money. And that's their contribution. Now, if they came and they also said, well, we want to come and be part of your event and we want to contribute in-kind support or something that offsets our cash, you know, contribution to that. That's another part of the conversation. And where we find that imbalance is that that's not commensurate with what they're getting in exchange for the marketing. And, you know, so I think that we're trying to find that sweet spot for where groups can come in and say, we'll do this in lieu of the cash piece, but we don't necessarily have that ability as staff to say, you know, if it costs you $1,100 for a 2-hour free swim, which is in, you know, the policy, could you offset that by saying, we'll, you know, we'll do some work to offset that? We currently don't have the authority to do that.
Tricia has her hand up. Go ahead, Tricia.
Yeah, good morning. Through the chair, just want to add a little bit to what Craig is saying. So the sponsorship policy that has been developed to date has largely focused solely on like free skates, free swims, and free admission. One of the significant challenges we have is actually the valuation component of those activities. So in those cases, we've created an equation, and you may recall in that policy, there was a schedule at the back that sort of outlined how that valuation comes to be. So what it does is take the, I'm going to call it the inconsistency out of the equation because everything is applied the same. It also gives all organizations that might like that opportunity the same opportunity to participate. So we don't necessarily know that X organization will always be a sponsor of an event because it's one that we do every year. That may change over time. We have not built out as of yet, and I would even argue that the first part of this policy implementation is still under review, even just from feedback that we've received in the last 3 months. So my forecasting is that there probably is going to be a report that comes to an all-rec committee, probably not April, but I'm guessing maybe June or the fall, where we talk a little bit about what's working before we try to evolve that any further. Because until our systems are in place to manage it effectively, it just creates chaos on our end in trying to manage those effectively. So if that helps add a bit more color to what Craig was already sharing.
Anything else on this?
Are we missing any opportunities here to facilitate engagement from the community and in our business? I mean, I understand that these policies, this particular policy, sponsorship policy, it's more monetary, but then we're kind of talking about a participation aspect, which becomes a little bit more muddy from what I'm hearing. So, but are we losing an opportunity to engage with our community, our businesses, to encourage them to, if monetary sponsorship is not something that they can do, is there other ways for them to engage in our community? And is that opening up Is that an opportunity? And are we missing that opportunity?
Yeah, so, so inside of the policy and if this, as Tricia pointed out, we still have to get to that valuation piece for these other that don't fit in the box, but it speaks to other things that haven't been, entirely clarified, but advertising, naming rights, and in-kind sponsorships. And the in-kind sponsorship piece, should a potential sponsor wish to provide in-kind services in return for recognition, acknowledgement, or other promotional benefits that align with the foundations of the policy, a proposal would be drafted and provided to the commission and committee for consideration prior to being, going forward. So it's a very formal process, but we're currently not able to administer those opportunities. We know they're out there. I think from a best practice perspective, and to Tricia's point, there's no guarantee that a service that is aligned with the values or even the delivery of that event would be guaranteed sponsorship. There is a true partnership, and delivery of that service does have to meet the mark, and certainly deliver on the goals of the organization they already see in delivering that service. But currently, we're just not equipped to leverage those opportunities, what I would say is the answer to your question. We do see, and naming rights is one that came up the other day in the Castlegar Commission meeting in the open, which is a very interesting scenario as well, because if somebody wanted to give us $1 million a year to put their name on this building, we would bring that forward to this committee quickly. But that's, a bit of an exaggeration, but certainly we're just not quite able to administer those opportunities just yet.
Right.
Tricia, go ahead.
Through the chair, the closest opportunity that we have, so we have a sponsorship policy and we also have a donation policy. In the donation policy, we do have donors of services that are truly interested in providing everything from pumpkins to, as a part of a Halloween event, because they happen to produce those on their property and they want to donate pumpkins, right through to people who want to donate other materials or supplies to other activities and events. The distinction between the two is the degree of exposure that particular person or organization is looking to have for their business. On the donation side, it is, we'll put something small within our write-up versus more what like Craig is talking about. If it's more like an event is sponsored, like a family day event is sponsored by a local business down the street, then they get a lot of prominent exposure for that event. And that's why the sponsorship side is actually a lot more defined than on the donation side. So we do have a means of engagement in a slightly different way for people that are truly just looking to give to provide some community benefit compared to those that are looking for a different type of acknowledgement of their contribution.
So I'm just suggesting is that perhaps there's that seed that's being planted today, the future opportunity to bring in a participation aspect to this, because I look over at Arnie and our mayor and say to him that you have a lot of businesses in this community who would really like to reach out and participate. And as part of marketing is to be able to put their sandwich board out and say that, we're contributing. We're not monetarily able to, we're not donating technically, but we can physically be in play to assist with resources and that sort of thing. And I would think that in the future, we would want to encourage you to develop a framework that could allow that. Because that's where a lot of this is why we're having this conversation, is that there is an example of that out there right now. And I think that from the representative of the chamber that is involved, they certainly would get feedback from their membership suggesting that this is either a good opportunity or it's not. But to think about that, planting that seed and watering it a little bit further, I think is worth looking into.
I was going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth.
I doubt that.
No, but you make it good. So I would like to take about a 5-minute recess and then we'll
Stretch.
forward.
by Joe, ought that be enshrined into a policy of sorts? Because we had no knowledge of that sort of thing, other than reading through the agreement, the application agreement with the potential applicant vendor, which does not cover off what Joe had put into his briefing note. My question would be to staff, should we be looking at creating that policy around that? It's just for clarity to the public.
And I think for clarity to our other staff participants, we're talking about the cancellation notice for an event at the rec center.
Yeah, and that briefing note that Joe had put out, identifying the neutralness, the Switzerland, if you will, of the policy around entertaining bookings with the rec center. I think it was very well written. And but I don't think there's anything publicly that's out there for people to see. And I don't, maybe, and I haven't gone through that agreement. You typically would sit down with a prospect. Maybe that's all covered off in there. I don't know. But it leads me to wondering if call for opportunity is my question.
He's not interested in you.
And maybe that's something that you can kind of wrestle with yourself, Tricia, and so on.
Yep, go ahead,
Maybe
Tricia.
Sorry, struggling with technology. So I caught part of that. The room was still muted for a little bit of your opening remarks, Director Vandenberg, but I think I get the gist of it. So I believe if I caught the conversation correctly, Joe had put out a briefing note related to the rental and some of that information put into something more publicly available was the request. Am I catching that?
Yep, that's what's prompting this discussion. And because it was so well done, it is a cornerstone, for me, it's a cornerstone of understanding. Should that be, is it necessary to have that in a policy?
Got it. So through the chair, to be honest, I'm struggling with remembering all of the things Joe put out in the last 4 weeks of February. And so I could definitely have a look at that for sure. And then
direction of staff would be great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Tricia. And I'm fine with direction of staff on that and going forward for the future. Perhaps though my colleagues would disagree with me. I would welcome their comments on that.
I see Director Watson, Chair Watson has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clarify, the rental agreements are RDCK wide rental agreements. They're not specific to Creston. So generally speaking, those are operational agreements. They've never been at a political level. That being said, what I will note is what Joe put out is from the policy. There's two policies apply here. Sorry, there's one policy that applies, and then there's the rental agreement itself. The policy that he's referencing is the staff, I don't remember the title, but it is in policy. And those are available to the public should they would like them. The rental agreement is on the website. So anyone that wants to rent the facilities has the full agreement and the information within it. So those are both readily available. I think if you've got direction to staff, it should be clear what you're seeking. And given these are rental agreements that are RD wide and not specific to Creston, it really should be a board direction if we're asking staff to do further on operational details. I hope that makes sense.
Right, and I don't know if I'm asking to get involved in the operational side. All I'm saying is that it was a piece of literature that was interesting and important to understand and read. And is it in a policy already? Because I don't know. And if it's not, perhaps we could, on the board level, entertain that. But I certainly would like staff to come back to me a little bit later because this is an add to our agenda that they're not prepared for. So
yeah, and so to clarify, he was referencing the policy that relates to staff. It's not staff harassment. That's not the right one. I can find the title and I can forward it to you, but that's what Joe was referencing in that email. And It was generally, it was an internal document to help people understand what the process is that is well laid out in agreements and those policies. So I don't think you're really seeking any further direction from staff to do something. Those things have been done, and that's what Joe was referencing in the document, in the email you're referring to. He wouldn't be making
Yeah,
up.
and I think for that, I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to externalize that? Because I wonder if it's warranted. The other comment I would like to make is just to correct for the record, clarifying the cancellation messaging from RDCK with the One BC event. And specifically in an article in the Advance on February 28th by Carolyn Grant, there is stated the reason why the event was canceled. And I will say that, and to paraphrase what's in the paper, it says the event was canceled due to safety concerns raised by the RCMP and confirmed by One BC themselves via the request for police presence. Okay, I will say that that is inaccurate. That is not true. That was not a reason for the rec center to be canceled. It was not a request from One BC at that point in time. It actually, to be known, it actually fell over to the Ramada as they were searching for other halls, that sort of thing. So it was not a reason that it was canceled here for this venue. I'm not disputing the reasons why in terms of public safety and that sort of thing. But I want to correct that piece in the paper that is not accurate. Secondly, it needs to be, I need to state that as directors, we were not a part of that decision-making process. We did not understand what we did not know what was going on. In fact, any of the emails and that sort of thing that went to RDCK / the CAO and the chair were not shared with us. The responses from RDCK were not shared with us. So I want to make that really clear because this is our backyard and I don't know that people understand that. And we're privy to the only thing that we ever saw was that which is what was rolling around in Facebook type of thing. So I just wanted to make that quite clear. And the event itself, I was in attendance of that event, and I will characterize it as it was a full room, 120 people, plus the foyer was overfill, 240 people that said were online participating. We had members from Lower Kootenay Band in the room, and they did ask questions. They did make statements. It was a peaceful gathering. And so I wanted to qualify that too as well. And but just generally, I wanted to make that correction because I think it's important.
Chair Watson, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So you've raised a couple things I'm going to speak to Director Vandenberg. Number one, going back again to the notion of do we need to externalize the documents Joe was referencing? They are externally available documents. One again is the policy and one is the rental agreement that's on the website. I believe the policy is as well, but if not, all of our policies are public documents. In terms of the communications with the newspaper and with others, it's being inferred incorrectly. No One BC did not request the cancellation. It confirmed when One BC requested police presence that there was safety concerns. That was the intention of that statement. And so it's just being misunderstood. Right. Let me finish, please, Director Vandenberg. We'd like to not interrupt each other. And then further, in terms of communications with the board, as I had indicated at the board meeting, any correspondence that the board would like to don't copy the whole board, because when we have the whole board on an email, we've constituted a meeting as soon as anyone starts discussion and it's not transparent. So as was indicated in the board meeting, anyone that would like to see those responses, we will send those to you. And I did send you 2 of those correspondences the day before the board meeting. I'm happy to send those out as well. There was quite an extensive one the executive worked with that had very specific questions, and that's the one I had forwarded to you. So it's more than available to directors who would like it. It's more of a procedure thing when it comes to communications over email. It's very not transparent to have communications with the board over email. So that's why we don't include the whole board in the responses. But again, we sent those out to those who wanted, and in the meeting, we indicated anyone else who would like to see them, we're more than able to provide those. And as you said, this is never a director discussion, just like the rental agreement is not a political decision or debate. The decision to cancel was not political either, which is why the board generally would not have been involved. I only started responding to the emails because they were suggesting they were political, and I needed to clarify the process. But no, the board would never be involved in a cancellation like that. I hope that helps.
Right, thank you. It does, because that's the important piece that needed to get out. Is that the expectation of our community was in this area here. The reality is that we didn't have as direct participation in that event as what some may think. And so I thought that it was clear to point that out. And a correction piece again, the reach out from 1BC to the RCMP only occurred when the venue of the Ramada was in play. It had nothing to do with the rec center, and that is a correction in that newspaper that I am referring to that I want to correct. So now I've had that opportunity to share that publicly with our community, and all is good.
Director Tierney. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would feel a bit uncomfortable. Creston Valley Services Committee starts communicating with the newspaper and correcting articles. I think as individuals we could, but and the other item was just as far as the safety concern, staff. I think the staff need to have that authority to make that call. I wouldn't want to get involved in, as far as communicating with us, that decision and having a say in it. I think it has to lay with the staff management that, there's a safety concern here. This perhaps was not the venue to do with kids and whatnot in the building, parents. So I would not think that the manager of the facility would need to check with directors as to that decision. Sure. I don't know if you're insinuating that, but that's
I appreciate Director Tierney's comments, because that was part of the decision point for us, and certainly the initial booking seemed innocuous and as a political rally, as the booker had indicated. And then, as time went on, we recognized there was a potential risk. Certainly the information we received from the RCMP, and that was, for us, was something to consider. And yeah, for the town of Creston and the RCMP in the valley, regardless of where the event is, they're still going to be there. And I think that's something that got our attention. But yeah, we are a recreation center, children and seniors and other activities, and an innocuous booking that could also bring with it other safety concerns was also part of the decision point. And as we got, as time went on, we got closer to the event, we recognized that was a real risk. And I believe that's in Joe's email as well about, maintaining code of conduct, whether that was the people in the meeting and in the rally or people external to that. That was also a consideration for us.
Fair enough. Yeah. We'll move to our next item then, which is Goat River Watershed Water Sustainability Plan update.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am online. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly here. Wonderful. So I'll just be presenting our update in this short series of about 4 slides. There's accompanying and additional details that can be found in the brief that was included in the addenda. So it'll cover 2 project updates and next steps for applicable committee members. Great. So the first update is that we recently received a letter from the province, which will be included in the correspondence section of the next RDCK board meeting agenda. So this update is just a brief overview of the proposal within the letter. So CVSC is made aware in a timely manner. So on February 24th, the province wrote to Nisukin Jason Louis, Yakanuki, and RDCK board chair, Amy Watson, in response to express interest in working collaboratively on long-term water management in the Goat River watershed. The proposal says that a sequence discussion process could be undertaken. It outlines beginning with clarifying and confirming existing watershed information, then jointly defining a shared long-term vision, and finally identifying tangible actions that could be taken individually or collectively. So those are just the high-level goals described in the proposal. Importantly, the proposal frames this stage as structured dialogue. It suggests that between now, which is really meaning April, and October, discussions could focus on developing a shared understanding of watershed values, key pressures, governance roles, and data gaps, while also exploring tools available under the Water Sustainability Act that may help address local concerns and inform potential next steps for decision makers. The next step is that the letter will be presented during the correspondence section of the March 19th board meeting agenda, just to repeat that next step. And the next major update is the upcoming community to community process. On February 24th, coordination staff from RDCK, Fraser Basin Council, and Yakanuki met to review proposed dates and a preliminary speaker list for the interim learning sessions. Participants will include elected officials from Yakanuki and RDCK, including electoral areas A, B, and C, the RDCK board chair and mayor of Creston. Isaac Decker will coordinate availability and preparation meetings with Nisukin and council. The process includes a preparation session, a land-based gathering, 3 interim learning sessions, and a 2-day in-person working session. So the learning sessions are intended to build shared understanding ahead of the working session, which will focus on developing a shared agreement. Proposed dates range from April 7th through May 27th. So I will send out a survey to electeds, the board chair and CAO with dates and times for the preparatory session, on the land gathering, and interim sessions. So that's that our immediate priority is confirming dates. I know that everyone's been waiting patiently for that. So once we have our dates confirmed, then we'll start to align speakers, develop a detailed agenda, and we will be circulating materials in advance so everyone has a chance to review and provide comment and ask questions. So
Can I just make a request
yeah.
pursuant to that? Yeah, on the learning sessions where you say who, I would ask that you consider at least some of Creston's town council in that, not just the mayor, some or all of council, because of the learning and the continuity of it as well.
Through the chair. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great idea. Making a note.
Chair Watson has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to note that one of your sections there, Camille, Bossier, Horn, and I are gone for a conference. So that's the April 20th to the 24th. 4 days previous to that, all the elected officials are at AKBLG. So glad you'll be sending out a survey. I just note that some dates have been confirmed without first convening with the directors, such as the May 27th, 28th. So if you can just ensure that Isaac is aware that we haven't been able to confirm the dates, and let's get those dates confirmed with availability before we move too far to confirm them. And second to that, we do need to review who is attending. One of the critical notes to make Mayor DeBoon chair at this committee is we have to be cognizant of numbers present and how that reflects back to Yakanuki Council. Part of the reason why I raised that is because we did hear at the board meeting, this is an RDCK, C2C, community to community, which some RDCK directors feel that means the whole board should be present, which is 20 directors. Council, I believe, is about 5. And so while I totally understand and wouldn't disagree with Creston Council, we are going to run into some issues regarding the amount of people we could have from the RDCK sitting, let's say, you know, hypothetically, metaphorically across from council, which is very few members. So it is one of the considerations that I know staff is going to review in terms of the best process to ensure we have the right people and not a ton of people that can make it not a very balanced conversation. So those are some of the considerations we have to have when it comes to who is present. Bare minimum, the CVSC directors, myself as chair, and Dale Horn will be present. And then from there, we really do need to consider how the whole board is a part of that or not, and then council. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Through the chair.
I was going to say,
Go ahead.
fair enough. I said all the part council. And I guess what I meant particularly is Director Dumas was my alternate. Perhaps maybe one or two more, but not. As you say, you don't want to overwhelm the numbers. Sorry, Camille, go ahead.
No, through the chair. That's great. That's definitely a consideration that has been made at the beginning of planning this process, is just wanting to maintain that balance of RDCK electeds and also Yakinuki Council electeds to, at least for the, or most importantly at the in-person capacity, and especially that the end of the process, which is the working session. But that's something that can be discussed with the planning team to see how we can involve other RDCK board members at the interim learning sessions, which will be, online, virtual, that sort of thing.
Thanks. I think that's all we need to hear on this one for now. Thanks for your update and the information.
Thank you.
We'll move to 9.2, which is continuing budget discussion.
Yes, I would be willing to start. First item on my list is the S240, which is the airport. And I guess my question is around the increase in budget. It's about 62,000 for this upcoming season. I believe that 50,000 of that is going to be earmarked towards a reserve. The question is, what reserve does it go into? But I guess from my point of view, I know that there is the intent is to work on extending the runway extension. But what we don't have is, and maybe I'm wrong again, is that we don't have a business plan, a business case that details what we're going to be doing over the next X amount of years, the reasons that we're creating the reserve amount. We don't have an understanding of what the expected return on that investment is going to be as part of this business case that we would want to work forward. You're asking for a commitment from RDCK for this, but yet we don't have, I don't believe we have an established plan as to what it's going to look like and why we're going to do what we want to do. We've talked about it, verbalized it, but we don't have anything that we can refer to as we walk forward. And additionally, we don't have a commitment from the board in terms of their role in the business preparation or the execution of this type of work. So I guess my hesitancy is that I'm not comfortable putting an extra, raising the budget 62,000, 50,000 towards a reserve without having a plan documented for us to refer to. That'd be my comments on S240.
There was a report submitted to us here by board that laid that all that out and why the runway needed to be extended and
it was yes, it was part. But it did not get into the fiscal portion of it, why it's important to do it. It says here are opportunities. Part of this conversation needs to include in this this business case are restrictions that we face with the ministry. That has not been cohesively put into a document along with the projections and numbers and what the ROIs are going to be. So that's the elements that are missing that I refer to. And before I wish to put taxpayer money into this reserve, I want to have confidence in saying, this is what we're going for. These are the reasons why. Here's what the expectations are going to be. Here's where our stop points are or forward moving points. Those things are missing in as far as I can tell.
So at this point, what is your stand then? Because and we're almost at what we're drop dead date for approving budgets.
Right. So I am fine with the S240, but without the reserve contribution this year until we have a business plan that wraps a lot of these questions up and the position of the board going forward of that airport authority board, what their role is going to be. I don't think we need to wrap these things up.
Dr. Tierney.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, I look at this as, we put money into and time into developing an airport master plan, in conjunction with the airport, board. And, I don't see it as the intention is for taxpayers to fund this, runway, but more, in the way of, local government is showing support for the airport, expansion, and that the idea would be to apply for grants that are available annually, and the fact that local government is supporting this improvement, and there is a plan, a master plan going forward, and that is what I believe the intention is to, seek outside grant funding to get this done. And the local government support is important for those funders to see.
Well, I agree with you, and I know that the master plan has laid out about $14 million of infrastructure upgrades and improvements over a long period of time. So, and the suggested infrastructure improvements are also in the master plan. So they're there. The grant that we are seeking to improve the runway is a grant that it's difficult to get, but again, there's a certain amount that we would have to contribute to that. And as you know, improving the runway is crucial for air ambulance, among other things. So this is all part of what's sort of in the plan and in the queue to carry out the plan. So it is necessary, and there's almost nothing in surplus now. We need to build that surplus because of the need to improve infrastructure.
And I don't disagree with it, but I will remind you that it's nice to look at where we want to go, but we haven't talked about the how and the why. The master plan is 30,000 feet. Okay, so now it becomes the opportunity to develop a plan that talks about specifically the advantages of looking at what some of the recommendations of the master plan is. It's the how and why. And that's what's missing in here. And before I'm comfortable committing to this, all I want is to understand what that program is. And maybe part of that how and why includes the conversations, as I have said, the opportunity to message the ministry on how important this small area airport and others in the province, how important they are. That's part of the how and why. And that needs to be, I think we need to have that understanding and not verbal. We need to have it documented, and before we start moving forward. It's a plan, and we don't have a specific plan. We have where we want to be, some aspirations, but I don't see the plan. And that's all I'm asking for.
Director Jack.
So I think there's an easy solution. We know there's a change that's going to impact us, like it or not. Creston is buying different aircraft, replacing their old fleet with ones that need, in certain weather conditions, longer run. So I'm not opposing the lift in preparation to have our money on the table. When and if the province says, hopefully they'll fund 80, maybe 90% with their infrastructure grants for runway expansion. I think the simple fix is if we're gonna go with this lift in the requisition, we hold the reserve in the regional district. We don't give it to town. Very clear that when we do the regional district financial plan amendment, in 8 months, if in fact the province says, yeah, here's a few $1 million, or in 18 months or whenever, it is very clear that the only reason that reserve that was there was for the runway. The reserve is not to make a nicer parking area for the people who have private planes and private hangars. The reserve is not for improving the kitchen, that little building. The reserve is not for those things. So it's pretty simple that we we know what the lift was in terms of targeted for reserve contribution. We reduce the grant to the town by that amount. We keep it in the budget as a contribution to RDCK reserve. And then we can have our conversation around exactly what's going to happen later. And if nothing's going to happen, if something changes, their ambulance changes, whatever, it's an easier mechanism for us then to ramp that built up reserve down and give it back to community if that's the future path. So my direction to staff would be put that reserve in an RDCK account, reduce the amount that's given to town this year by that amount. The money is taxed and on hold.
I could follow that line or that suggestion by Director Jackman and be okay with it, but I still will insist that we need to have a plan and a plan that allows us to measure what we're going forward, but just as importantly, that wraps in the communication, the opportunity with the board, because they're our partners in this and they need to be welcomed into this. And their network and connections need to assist us in this. So that is a part of that plan. So I'm okay with the impending lift. I do agree with Director Jackman that that 50 grand ought to be earmarked in RDCK, but I will be bringing up the need for us to be working on and developing a plan to move forward. The how and why.
I'm taking note of that. Right.
Well, I just wanted to, correct me if I'm wrong, the town has committed to $45,000 to do the engineering, so you've got a shelf-ready project ready to go. That in a way is a commitment to the future of that airport for the valley.
When we had our other budget meeting, I said, if there is a compelling reason for that money to be held in the town budget, we will give you that reason. I haven't given it to you yet, but if there is a compelling reason for that 50,000 to go be held by the town, we'll make sure you have that compelling reason. Is that okay?
Yeah, we have the ability, once we have to decide if we're going to tax or not tax.
Yeah.
Step one.
Yeah.
How we move the money, we got all year. Any month we can move the money through a financial plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and further to that, if we decided not to do this, it would probably throw in jeopardy that grant application for like $2.3 million. And then if we don't have that or put that in jeopardy, we're setting ourselves back. So we need to continue with that. And I will take this back to Mike as far as the compelling reason, and if there is one, we will hold the money. If not, the money will be held by RDCK. But
Thank you, but we need to give direction to staff today to create the reserve in the RDCK. That would be our direction, Yev.
Say it again, just so
If we need today for Yev to create an RDCK reserve for this service. Put the money in there and offset the amount to town. We don't do that, then the money's gone.
Yeah.
To town.
That will be the direction of staff then, to staff.
I think we're good on that. And then the EA will find out what, the how and why, which is great. The other item that I would like to bring forward is, S-174, and I should be polite in saying I would offer the table to others. It's not all about what's on my list. So my apologies right now, but I will bring forward S-174, the cemetery. And I guess, Norm, a discussion on the recent changes that occurred around the cemetery based on what we as a group had the understanding in our meeting in terms of that cost center. So I'm just bringing it forward for discussion.
So I have 6 of them. This is one of them, like the last one. I guess if I can ask through the chair question, staff, in a service like S-174, and it applies to others like 152 and the airport, when would the grant be transferred to the town or this other small cemeteries? When do we actually transfer that grant? Is it going to be held off until August, like all other grants, when we receive our funding? Is that correct?
Not sure who can answer that, but I can't.
Well, we never, so far as I know, none of this money, we can budget something. And to me, the airport is a huge change. We just talked about holding that reserve today. These other services, we do have time, provided we get the requisition right to fulfill what we intend to do. We do have time to make adjustments in line items where the money is going to be sent. Because we don't give any of the money to these external groups, town being an external group, until the province pays us. The province doesn't pay us until we all pay our property taxes. That's in July. And the province sits on it for up to a month and give us the money. So the conundrum with cemetery is we've never had the conversation with the other cemeteries. Dr. Tierney rightfully brought up a huge boost in costs, expense for one of the cemeteries in this area. So I'm okay with the overall global number, but before the grants are issued, we can change the apportionment between what goes to town, what goes to the small cemeteries, only being in areas A and B as it is now. So I would like that kind of understanding, if we can put it that way, because what I heard was what the select committee recommended, maybe based on me being noisy, that we use the interest from the perpetual care fund for its intended purpose, that is for the ongoing O&M. The town council overrid that and said we're gonna have a conversation. So we can leave the requisition where it is, and the amount that's gonna be granted out to all these little groups where it is, and have that conversation before us. And maybe either the cemetery select committee will dissolve because it's ineffective, it's gonna be overridden, not just on that, but other issues that were brought up in terms of fees or commissions. And there's an issue I brought up about where reserve money sits with town on that one. We could tell town, we don't want you to hold a capital reserve for that cemetery. We will hold it as a collective service. So by August, we could change any of those line items. The airport is very different. We need to show the province our intention to act. This one, we need to have the conversation before we cut the checks between all these small groups. Maybe one of Director Tierney's cemeteries does need another 1,000 or so. Maybe others need less. I got a budget update on Boswell last night, one of my committee meetings. So I'm good with leaving the number where it is. Very disappointed as to how the conversations evolved so far. And before we cut the checks in August, I want to make sure we have those conversations, whether it's this committee of the whole, I'm good with sitting in council, or whatever it needs to be.
Director Watson had her hand up and then it will be asked.
Okay, start with Chair Watson.
Yeah, thanks. Just in terms of timing, contribution service grants are approved at the June board meeting. So that's when you would, if you want to make alterations, you generally would want that as part of the June. It's the financial service aid grants. And then they are actually cut in August. The only note to add to that is that if the financial plan is specific enough to know where these are going, you might need a financial plan amendment, which isn't hard. to be included if you change what's being allocated for the June financial service grants.
Yeah, through the chair, thanks for that. It seemed to me that there was a trigger date, knowing the checks are cut. So if we're gonna have this conversation that council suggested, and I was told later, don't worry, be happy, we'll have an ongoing conversation. It's gotta be before June. I'm good with that, so long as we have that conversation. And I think the line items here, I think we're safe. They are so generic. Sorry, I got too many open here. S-174, grants, 107,510. And that includes 6 sites. Forest lawn, 3 in area A, 2 in area B. It's so generic that staff only have their assignments to work from.
So, and Uli, you had your hand up as well.
Director Watson answered it. The entries, book entries last year were made August 1st.
Yeah.
Thanks. Just wanted to, I thought I heard Director Jackman make a comment in a number of items in that, that dissertation, if I can call it historical. I'm wondering, are you suggesting that perhaps we ought to be looking at the a discussion around the terms of reference in this service? Is that where this is going to go? Because am I wrong there? Because I think that the select committee is wondering what is our value, and you know, what we're asking us to contribute as partners, but our value is unclear as to what we decided as going forward through that committee is just a suggestion, and is that in fact the purpose in the terms of reference? So I don't know, or maybe I'm opening up a can here, I don't know, but I think I just want to be clear on the table. Is this kind of the direction that we could be going to? What's the value of the select committee with the funders?
So I had a couple others.
Good.
I'm gonna skip then S-152. It's just similar, just life, except the contributions are split under 2 line items, because part of it is contribution to the service and part of it is a contribution to town, which is a grant, because it's external. The conversation there is that it's not wholesome enough for me at least, is who's earning money on task numbers, who's getting money, compensation for doing this work, which is neat and very appreciated. Who's getting the money? Because if town is properly fully costed, their add-on costs for road rescue, lift assist where they do it, they're doing not very much medical first responder right now. If that's fully costed and that we can see the exact number the province is paying for, then we need, before we cut the checks, to have that adjustment. If it's not enough, we need to pay more. Traditionally, it was not enough. We need to boost to that budget. So because we haven't resolved the service delivery as a whole, I'd like to see the numbers. And then I also want to see the numbers from Canyon Lister and Greenville. Canyon Lister, Yak, and Greenville. So that one would require a financial plan amendment to change the allocation of the checks between the two. If I keep going on the fire line, S-129 Window Lakeview Fire, we asked in December, Director Vandenberg and I, for the schedule for major equipment replacement, major apparatus and equipment replacement. So that was December, January, February, March, 3 months. I still want it. I want to see why we have 59,000 a year to that reserve. So there must be some form of asset management. I haven't heard of any real issues with the building. I think Craig's group has a very good handle on that building for now, but I'd like to see the other numbers. Also, I've asked before if we could have identified the balance in the town account for what we called an alternative water supply reserve. For some reason, and I kind of remember why, we wrote into that contract years ago that we would pass, and I think it was $8,000 a year to town for them to set aside. So we could provide better water supply for when they do response, sort of in these far-reaching areas further from their station, to refill tenders and shovel water. And I'm glad we did it. But the money is not accessible, and I brought this up many times. This year, I would like to see our allocation to town make the adjustment. Maybe it's a letter back and forth staff to staff saying, we're reducing your grant this fiscal year by 40,000, which will zero out your reserve in town account for alternative water supply and allow us to create that reserve account within the regional district. Then Director Vandenberg and I can take advantage of real ongoing work at, say, Windle Lake in Windle, where they're building, upsizing water mains and can install hydrants, and they can do better with a little injection of cash or a few tens of thousands and meet the long-term objectives that Creston has asked for. Because Creston isn't connected the way Director Vandenberg and I are, and that's an unnecessary third step to roll that money through town. So I've asked for this before, that when we cut the check, that there's letters back and forth that says, your grant is being reduced by the current amount of reserve. The contract will be amended to eliminate that. And in good faith, with this letter of agreement, we will provide that alternative water. Then we can get on with that work. So that's my window, if you ask.
So are you asking RDCK staff to ask us of the town? Do you want to send an email directly to town yourself? I'm not sure.
I get told off for getting involved in operations too much, so I'm not gonna get any further involved than making the statement that I've made for several years.
Okay, but then you could,
RDCK
staff
please, yeah.
to go back to town with this.
Yeah, and the numbers on the page today are fine. I think the service is everything we need. And if we need to show a financial plan amendment before this year's check is cut, we've got from now till June to do that. But love to see that one. Briendale Fire, similar, still waiting for the apparatus list. It's just side comment there.
Sorry, before you move on, what was that service, please? I just want to make a note of that.
Well, S-129, Windle Lake Fire Service.
Thank you.
We've been locking money in an account. Hopefully it's carefully flagged. Staff used to, of course, flag for alternative water supply. And it's written into the term of the contract, which needs to be reviewed.
That's S-129?
S-129, yeah, is fire protection, defined A and C, Windle Lake.
So if I might suggest to the chair that the two elements or the two propositions that Director Jacqueline put forward, can we have that reflected in the action plan? So that we don't lose it, because yes, it's like the big black hole, and Gary is correct. We did talk about this in December. It hasn't gone. It's a reasonable request. It hasn't seemed to be coming back to us, but perhaps because we're not tracking it. And one way of doing that is through our action plan, our action item list. And that'd be those two elements getting in there so that staff can have access to that referral as well. Maybe helpful.
Chair, are we able to interrupt this agenda item and go to time? I think we're past.
Oh, sorry, yes, let's do that. Thanks. Any questions?
We had Tanya Wall had a question in chat. I don't know if she's still online.
Yeah, I'm still online.
Okay, go ahead, Tanya.
So I've got a couple, and I'd like to revert back to the economic development discussion. So thank you for including me and allowing me to have the questions today. So back in June of 2024, I was present at an EAP meeting, and there was discussion at that meeting about moving forward with public consultation, or more so community organization consultation, before moving forward with any plan to go with your economic development, like the new procedures moving forward. So can anybody answer why we, like, as community organizations, and I'm speaking specifically about Fields Forward, Chamber of Commerce, Creston Valley Tourism Society, KES, the College of the Rockies, why none of us have been consulted at this point when you're looking at going out to an RFP? That's question one.
I would love to respond in my view on behalf of the committee. I tried, Tanya, to say that we will disenfranchise the much needed community champion cohort if we don't involve them in the process of this EAP governance conversation. And the default consensus was, well, let's get an outside set of eyes on it first, which is what we did. We got outside. You know the person, Christina Becky.
Yeah.
You've worked with her in your years. And it was good. She's refreshing, brings in some interesting observations. But I guess by consensus, that was considered to be a prudent first step. I wrote CAO Horn, and I don't think I copied all of you, my concerns a few days ago that we are, with this expression of interest, still on the path of disenfranchising our community champions. That's why I started my comments on that with maybe it should be preferred. However, if it's going to be split up in a manner where I think each community champion group can pick and choose where they think they would excel in response to the expression of interest, I'm less concerned. But I very much appreciate your comment, Tanya, because we need community champions to govern rural areas. Maybe not so much in town. Every mile you go outside of town, the more I rely on community champions to help us get done what we need to do. So I hope we're not insulting community, and that cover letter to community will say that we still want their engagement.
I can only echo and agree with Gary, and remember that little brief email communication that we had, and to Gary's point, I did support. Of course, then we moved forward with the workshop, and now we are here. But I do know that not only Tanya, but the other groups in the community, I have had chats with them, and there's this whole flexibility factor. Needs to be a part of the EOI, which I'm hoping that as a result of our communication today, we still can maintain some of that to ensure that our community champions have an opportunity to input, because we didn't have that, Tanya, and maybe this is a way of trying to make up for that.
I can't answer any better because I've read the report. This is kind of the way we'd had it, so. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got two more if I can, if you'll entertain them.
Sure.
So
Sure.
my next one is based on the strat planning session that was held then. It included all of the government officials, no community officials, but was there an actual written report from the consultant that is public information, or was it just communicated through, general meeting and consensus of that day?
There's only the internal stuff, and it was intended initially, the first meeting that we had with Christina, the session we did, was intentionally done by us as elected officials, because this was the governance part of it, not the operational part of it. So we sat together to form the decisions on what we would do next as governance. So that's why it went that way. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a little more time down the road to change that. But that's why that session was that way, Tanya.
Okay.
So if I may.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, Tanya, that wasn't a strat planning session. That was actually a workshop to explore the ideals and try to discover what a governance program ought to look like, what the important aspects and that sort of thing. There was a summary document available for that, but I don't know if that's in terms of a workshop, and I would look to others that are smarter than me, does that become external documents through the workshop procedure?
Yeah, I don't think it does.
I don't know either.
No, I think it generated the staff report that's on today's agenda, is what it is. So that's about the best we could answer that for now, Tanya.
Okay, thank you. One more, if I may.
Sure.
So this is more based on, and I need to say this as well as just a general comment. It's been enjoyable sitting in on the meeting today and hearing the dedication about, your line items and the budget and really taking taxpayers' pockets into consideration. This one is more around the funding from the 2025 and 2026 budgets then of the S108, because if I'm not mistaken, the extended contract to KES ended in September, and we are now in March, and there has been no main lead, I guess, on the economic development. Yet the same organizations that I'd mentioned earlier continue to do economic development in each of their expert sectors, let's say that. Is there any opportunity, or do you have any idea, is this money that has not been spent in the associated contracts, is that just going to remain in operations? Could it be distributed through the organizations that are currently continuing the work of economic development, or is it just going to be strictly put into reserve?
It's an operating surplus, so we're holding the money, and I'm holding my breath to see what community responds to this expression of interest. So the money that S107 didn't spend sits as part of our operating surplus ready to be spent this year. And recommendation from my commission in S107 was to keep taxation at the same level, hold this little bit of unspent money, and see what community comes to us with in terms of how they can meet our needs.
From an S108 point of view, I would echo the same comments, which is also why you perhaps heard me say that understanding what the breakdowns are of the funding recipients and the storyboards that are attached to each of them would resolve a lot of this question in budget season for going forward. So it's too late now, but going forward, we need to have a better understanding of the allocations to each of the S108 recipients. And we don't, it's quite confusing. And we're getting better at it, but I'm not as astute as Director Jackman is in his backyard yet. But this would help going forward and make it more public as well.
Okay, if I may, my closing comment would be, we as a collective group have been sitting and discussing what we are doing in the community for the past, I guess, 4 or 5 months. We've all been in connection. Before you go and I hope hire somebody that has to start at ground zero, I really hope that you guys get up to speed on what these organizations are completely doing, how we are working collectively, and do some consultation before we get a hitch of somebody that doesn't or may not be in our own backyard. And I just appreciate the fact that you're taking a second look at this. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jessica.
Tanya said it all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else online?
There was Observer. Still there? No, yeah, Observer's still there. Dylan, there's a few.
Anybody with any other questions?
I see a chat comment from Ben at KES as well, just acknowledging Tanya's comments.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we'll public time and back to our agenda. Action item list is next on the agenda.
I'm sorry, it's to the chair. I'm not finished. And I don't know if Director Jackman has any more, but I do want to bring up, and I'm hoping that Yev may be on the line, but this is to do with S193. There's 3 areas within that budget that I need to ask questions on for clarification, 193 is the library. And so if I may, in the income statement, there's 50 grand being pulled out in 2026, and then looks like it's being expended as well later on down in the expense side under capital expenditures. What is the expenditure that the money is being earmarked for?
And through the chair, that's for planning and engineering for the replacement of the HVAC system at the library. So the 150,000 in 2027 is the replacement of that unit, and 50,000 is planning and engineering for that.
That's a big number.
It's a number, so we don't have to come back and just in case we need more planning and engineering. We also have to consider there are new requirements for public facilities, including architectural and potentially structural professionals that might need to be involved in that. So it's a number that if it's not expended, would be carried forward into a request to be carried forward to the actual construction budget so.
Okay, thank you for that. The other item that I have is transfer to community services A109. There's 25,000 and change. Moving there, can you remind me what that allocation is for?
Yeah, through the chair, community services covers 50 some services. And that is the library's share of overhead and community services, including salaries for general manager, regional managers, et cetera, communication. So that's the library's share as per an established apportionment. And Joe and Tricia have a spreadsheet that lays that out very clearly. And so that's the annual contribution that goes to A109 to community services for overseeing the library.
Thank you. And this may lead into others, but the grant section, $643,700 in the grant line item. That's not just for one library. That's for reading centers as well.
Yeah, through the chair.
What's the split?
So through the chair, it's for the Creston Library is 587, 653. For the East Shore Reading Center is 20,400. For the Rhinedale Reading Center is 20,400, and the Yak Reading Center is 15,300. And that was in the report that Joe had submitted previous special budget meeting.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track. And so is that a 587, 653? Is that the amount that the library, the Creston Library asked for?
Yeah, through the chair, that is their Friday closure scenario that they presented to us at 587, 653.
Okay, so I also know that they are very, very diligent in extending a fundraising campaign. I would want to earmark that contribution this year, and this is a suggestion that that money be available to the Creston Library, providing that they are able to have their library open to at least a 40-hour week by June. Because I will, once again, I will compare that library to how that's being, the monetary, the fiscal operations compared to Castlegar. And Castlegar is operating the same thing on less money and more hours open. So I don't think that I'm being unfair by saying that this is what their ask is, which is higher than what Castlegar's ask is. But we should really have that extended to 40-hour a week, not from 32. And I'll remind you that Castlegar is a 50-hour week for that same kind of money. So there's an opportunity to look at things from an internal point of view. That's fine. They can go out, raise money in the community, maybe talk to Lower Kootenay Band, because they certainly do a lot of things for the Lower Kootenay Band group. And but I think that it's as a funder, I'm keen on allowing them to operate in that capacity, but they have to open up that extra day. Castlegar is open 6 days a week. Creston is 4, and they're two of similar libraries. So I would put out there that would be a requirement for this money to be available as a funder. providing that they are able to open to 40 hours a week by June.
Director Jackman.
Being an arm's length grant, and given that there's not level of service requirements or documentation in place, which would be negotiated, I don't think we can impose that at this time. The pressure points would be, and I'm not saying we should do this, you could say we're gonna tax a certain amount, give the library less, like 80% of that amount, and hold the rest in reserve. You could do that as negotiated, but you can't just impose something on another entity. I don't recommend what I just said. I'm just saying that's the leverage that you could use. I don't think we can do it in good faith, just abruptly. I don't think that's good process. Again, as I say, we need community champions, societies and entities which have a huge amount of funding through volunteer base to do these things. I do know we have hands raised. We've been allowing people to speak without freedom of the floor at this budget discussion process, that I would hope what I just said would reflect Sarah's concerns. They have given us a good faith budget and pretty clear direction what they can do with that budget. If we want next year to break the budget up and hold back some of it as part of negotiation between now and next year, I think that would be a fair approach. I also understand that other libraries are in transition. The snapshots, which I appreciate, Director Vandenberg has done a lot of research, may not hold over the next 1 or 2 years. So I'm very reluctant to try and impose a condition where we don't actually have authority. The only authority we have is to withhold funds, and I'm reluctant to do that.
So I'm appreciative of the comments and this discussion and pointing that out, because I don't know what the mechanisms are. All I'm doing is taking information and data that's available to me, and with a business background, making some sense of it on behalf of the taxpayers. So I appreciate your comments on that, and this is our discussion. We're out of the public realm now. So, but those are comments that I want to have tabled because there are people out there that are asking these questions.
I don't, sorry, I had her hand up.
I would have to.
It doesn't anymore, Chair.
I'd have to
It says never hand up anymore.
We'll leave it as is for now.
Yep, and I think I've made some good points. to Think about going forward.
Okay, anything else?
I can do these separately. S128 Greendale Fire, same thing. Where's the rationalization for contribution for this reserve? The major apparatus replacement and other equipment. I've had a partial conversation that you've got a huge rollover of PPE and SCBAs and stuff like that right now. But I would love to have the piece of paper in front of me so I can speak to community. In area aid is 10 point whatever percent increase. People ask me a question, I lack the data to answer it properly. The other one I had was S166 street lighting, but I think Uli and I have started that conversation. If we're going to, again, that's a very small defined area service. So I can leave that, I guess, to an email conversation between now and the board meeting.
I need to remind you, we have to be in council chambers in an hour. We have a lot to do in an hour.
Yeah. So fire.
Through the chair, that's the last item that I have on my list.
So next is the action item list. Anything you want to do anything on that? We have to get to our close meeting.
We are adding the items then, which I scribbled already at the beginning.
Have Robin take note and add those items, yes.
Perfect. Well, Katie.
The dangerous dog bylaw, I think we've kind of explored that to a point of understanding. I don't know that it's necessary to continue on the action item list. We are moving forward in some capacity on that, correct?
Sure, I'd like it to stay
Okay.
because we're not at the voter assent decision point yet. I'm still crossing my fingers. There is a way to fund based on the first bylaw we passed. Fund action if needed versus the voter assent to create the bigger budget it rolls over year, so I like it to stay.
Yeah, fine with that.
So item 3 is, I guess it would be to staff. Where are we at that conversation around the Kootenai River Secondary School? And I think the idea was to speak with SDA. And that's been sitting there since June 2023. Like what, perhaps it's, how, I guess maybe to our committee, how important is that term of priority? Because 2023, this is 2026 now.
Doesn't seem to have gone anywhere, does it?
Yeah, through the chair, we met with staff, management at KRSS 2 years ago at least. And they were actually unaware of the request that some personnel change. I think we reported on this actually. And they had some personnel change at the principal level, so the new principal wasn't aware of that ask from the previous principal. And so it's essentially just sitting there, and there's been no follow-up. I know that Joe had conversations with SDA, as has Tricia since, about other opportunities for shared use of facilities. This isn't one of those items that's come back to the top for us to consider. And it essentially is just hasn't gone anywhere.
So is it a priority for this table that we continue this? And these were funding conversations for the auditorium.
Chair? I perceive an inequity that town has supported that auditorium over and above what rural has. That is part of the conversation. I don't think council would be prepared from this as an issue. And I think, are you still providing chair within your town budget allowance to push to support the auditorium every year independent? Yeah, 10 or 15,000, or maybe it's more now.
I think it's 15.
15. And that's just an indicator of maybe that we should have had a better conversation by now about what's there, how is it used, and how is it supported. I don't want town to disregard my asks about where I think there's equity or inequity, and I do not want to disregard town's comments to the same. This is one of those. I don't want to disregard, even if it's not a lot of.
I think I agree with, we should leave it there. I think I probably have some archived emails on this subject that I need to review. And because I think part of this is with the external pressure on us to manage that funding properly. So just want to go back to that and see, say where we're at with that.
So at the very least, leaving it on there generates this type of updated discussion. So there's no harm in that.
Nope.
And stay on. And that actually leads us to the last item on our list, which is the TUS, the Traditional Use Study report. That is the opportunity to speak with authors to verify some of the findings that were reported in that report. To me, it's not, because that report is being referred to, and I see it a number of times in our staff reports, it's then regarded as being true. And perhaps it is, but we've never had an opportunity to discuss some of those things that are a little bit we're not really aware of, or cloudy, or that sort of thing. It certainly gives the public impression that this is what we stand behind. So that was the intent of just sitting down and having that conversation with the authors of that report. But honestly, it's as I read through that report time and time and time again, other than we shouldn't be. I don't believe we should be embedding it in our staff reporting. It is a standalone done by Lower Kootenai Band by Tanaha, and should be regarded and supported as such. It doesn't mean to say that RDCK is in compliance with that or in agreement of it. I think as soon as, I believe that if it stays out of staff reporting, we don't need to pursue this any further. I don't think we're gonna get anywhere with this request, to be honest with you. So where's the value here? That's my comments on it right now.
I think we are addressing this in council to council meetings.
And I think that'd be the opportunity.
And so I think it's not lost in the shuffle here. I think it's a slower process than we thought, but I think we are finding ways to address it as time goes on. That's my hope anyway.
So then the question to the group is, does it remain as a conversation point from month to month? Or do we let it evolve into our water sustainability planning discussions?
Even there for now.
I prefer to leave it there for now too. Okay. So I would like them to adjourn this meeting and jump right into our closed meeting or.
Well, yeah, to recess, motion to exclude the public from meeting.
As
So moved.
11.1. So moved, seconded by Director Kenny, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Will we recess and reconvene in close?
Okay,